Welcome to another episode of Collector's Quest. On this episode, the guys and I talk about set collecting. And this is a long episode. It's rambly. It's not as focused as our normal episodes where we have a clear beginning, middle, and end that we want to get to. We're just having a big group discussion on what it means to collect sets. And this was something I brought to them because I think set collecting is kind of all over the place and people just let it mean whatever they want. I just kind of wanted to talk about those constraints and how set collecting is really just this way that we've contrived to collect. We've just made these frameworks to put ourselves in and then we go from there. And is set collecting even a good idea anymore? I don't know, probably not. But that's what we're talking about, so stay tuned. Oh, and don't forget to tell your mom, give us a rating on iTunes if you don't mind, and music!
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Collector's Quest. I'm Tyler here with Johnny and Stefan. What's going on, guys?
I think this is a record for the least amount of pre-show that we've ever done.
It is 12:30 a.m. I've got work tomorrow morning, and you're not free to record tomorrow, Johnny, so we're just doing it right now. I am ready to go. We've recorded this late before, just I wanted to get into it so we didn't do our normal 90 minutes of talking about nothing before we get to recording.
I call that hanging out with my friends, but okay, Tyler.
But, you're only doing that because it's quarantine. Normally hanging out, we would be at PRGE. You would be sitting down selling $5 games, and I would be running around stressed out over a Chrono Trigger registration card.
Yeah, hanging out with your friends is what you were doing while we were waiting for Tyler, and then Tyler showed up, and now it's not.
Yeah.
And then
now it's like that awkward conversation when you're like sitting with your friend at lunch and a coworker walks up.
Yep. Hey guys.
You guys don't do that's mean, guys. I like my coworkers.
Okay. I mean, I know you need to say that because some of them listen, but it's okay.
That's right.
I don't think they do. My mom listens. She doesn't.
I don't think anyone cares. So, maybe we should jump into the episode, yeah?
Yeah, Johnny, what's this is your episode, Johnny.
So this is a Tyler episode. He brought this idea up to me last week, and this is me. This is more of a thought exercise. This isn't like a research heavy episode. I just wanted to talk to you guys about set collecting, where we think it is, and the general rules people put on set collecting, and if all that still applies, if we have it wrong, if we have it right, just, it doesn't need to be a super long talk or anything, but I've been thinking a lot about sets, so I wanted to hear some other takes. That's it.
Johnny,
that's what the episode's about.
I'm curious as to why you have been thinking about sets a lot. Was there a catalyst for that?
Well, I'm always thinking about sets. Data. A lot of it had to do with the list episode. I'm glad you actually asked this because I was thinking about how we build our list and what I like and what I don't like. And then we put all the things I would want in a list. And then I realized that was really stressful for some people, Tyler, and maybe some of our listeners to hear. And it had me thinking, yeah, it had me thinking more about, a list can actually be reduced. And what I meant to say, and we said list a lot, and what I really want is a good repository. So more like a database where all of this stuff exists and which would allow you to have custom lists. But my problem is with data accuracy. And then that made me think about sets and how accurate our sets are. Because really, sets are kind of, unless it's a hard and fixed thing, sets are kind of bullshit. Everyone who says they have a full set with maybe a few exceptions, they definitely don't have full sets. They don't. And that's not, I really think debatable. And people are going to be like, whoa, I've got a set. I know it
has a complete NES set.
Maybe. I said that. When I said there was a few caveats, I assumed maybe a Braveheart out there. But we talk about sets, and that's what I want to ask you guys. What does that even mean to have a set? What are what are the rules that allow one thing to be a set and not another? And then I kind of wanted to discuss that and more into what Stefan was asking, like what some of my other catalysts for thinking, aside from just the list, was, as I told you guys, I've been buying PAL Super Nintendo games off and on, very sparse. And like even the ones I've ordered, it's been a few months. I haven't gotten any. Everything with the pandemic is just shipping from Europe has become a crawl, depending on what country it's coming out of. Like these two games I'm waiting on have been sitting in limbo for 2.5 months. So who knows if they will ever show up or not. So I've kind of not been buying them. But if you're buying PAL Super Nintendo, and that's like a weird distinction to put. I have to say, I'm buying PAL Super Nintendo. It's just Super Nintendo, right? In PAL territories, which is, you can't just say Europe either. And there's a thing that we could get into. I could go through a whole thought exercise on like what the proper term is there, because it's not just Europe. People say PAL, they think Europe, but it's really PAL territories, which was really just a way to describe color input for televisions and the way a signal was read, and then the frames, and the refresh rate of the frames per second. This different hertz rate, 60 to 50 and 30. Like it's a weird technical thing, and the region that is PAL is most of Europe, part of Asia. And this is, you have to remember, like some of the confusion people say, oh, well, it's Europe. It's not Asia though, because that's like all NTSC Japan. No, because Russia, which back then was also had the USSR, even though there wasn't a lot of games coming out of the USSR. But when games went in there, USSR had large chunks of Russia, and Russia still has a piece of it in Asia. And then you have Australia, which is its own continent. And then you have like South Africa, again, on another continent. And these are all PAL. So just saying European doesn't work.
Right.
So that's, for anyone who says that, for PAL, that's what PAL means. So it's not just Europe. Didn't need to go that deep on that. But you also have like, again, NTSC, you have like the Middle East can have that, but it can also have PAL. It can have, India has NTSC and not PAL, I think. So there's a lot of weird stuff.
And Japan, that's my pet peeve, is when people say, I'm going for the NTSC set of PS2. It's like, oh, you're getting all the Japanese games too? Like, it's such a weird thing to say.
Well, except that they do call it NTSCJ. Like that's...
Yeah, but that's a different delineation, right? NTSCJ, NTSC-A, and then there's NTSC-M. That's why I'm saying, for Middle East, there's a bunch of them that people don't... And then there's like different ones within the J region, depending on language codes.
Yeah.
So there's not a good way to describe these things. And that's my problem with our lists and our sets. And then you can't even say that for Game Boy. There's no such thing as PAL Game Boy.
Right. It's region free.
There are games that were released in PAL territories I cannot care about.
Well, and the Game Boy isn't PAL because the screen there isn't getting an input rate of that frames per second. It is... They're all uniform.
Right.
So unless I'm wrong about that, you can correct me, but at least on the GBA and stuff, there's not like...
you're right. It's the same thing with Game Boy.
Yeah,
They're all
the original
things.
Game Boy is region free.
Yeah. So yeah, all the Game Boys are region free, and the DS until the DSi was also region free, except for like one weird one, which is like the Panasonic QDS or whatever.
There's a Panasonic QDS? I've never even heard of that.
That one has region locked on it, and so does the DSi. Like when you get to the DSi, and then the 3DS had some region locking. But before that, all region free. But people just say, oh, it's PAL, but PAL refers to something very specifically, or to territories which don't line up in any organized sense. So what we've done, because North America is neat and tidy with our sets, is we've come out and we've said, I collect a set. It's North American. Or we say, oh, I'm collecting the US set. But then we forget about Canada, which is also in North America. And then we forget about Mexico, which also sometimes has its own independent releases, and Canada has their own. So you're like, I have the full Super Nintendo set. But then you're like, okay, well, do you have all the Canadian variants? No, I have one of each. Okay, well, so... Does that count for the full set? Do you have the ones that were made in Mexico? Do you have all the ones that came out of that factory? Which revisions do you have? There's just a lot going on with sets, and that's kind of what I wanted to get into, even though I just talked a lot about it.
So, Stefan, you asked Johnny what prompted this, and Johnny gave some bullshit incorrect answer. And then he went into what really prompted it. He's collecting PAL Super Nintendo games, and he's really concerned about people calling him PAL Super Nintendo games.
No, they're both there. Like I said, I overthink everything, right? So I sit around and I think, and I was collecting PAL, and I started thinking about that, and then we have our conversation about lists, and I'm like, well, how do I categorize this? Because the question is, I'm collecting PAL Super Nintendo. How do I put this stuff on a list? Right? How do I look at my list and my database, and how do I make it better? So they are linked always, because most of what I'm thinking about when I'm collecting games is, how do I write it on a spreadsheet to put in my database? How do I author all of this stuff correctly that it makes sense? And I'm still not even completely there yet. I have a lot of ideas on how to get there. Unfortunately, I look at all of the rework and all the time I don't have, and I don't know when that's ever going to happen. Like it's bad enough that I've considered putting an ad somewhere like Facebook or Craigslist for someone just to come and do data entry for me. That's how daunting, right? Because I'm like, well, this is like, I don't have time to do this data entry part. What I want to do is think and organize all of it. So once I have it laid out, it'll be so much entry, and I don't really want to do all that. You don't really need to do anything if you get all the fields, but then you got to take into account that, like keystroke errors per minute of human data entry is not a zero number, so how do we go about correcting that? Anyways, Tyler, so it wasn't just that I'm collecting PAL Super Nintendo. There's a lot. It's a complicated answer. There's a lot of things going on. And one of the things I'm always doing, as you know, when I'm collecting is thinking about stupid lists and my database. It's the thing I do most.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. And I have this same issue as you. And I think the way that I personally deal with it is by ignoring everything I'm not collecting. Because I'm only collecting American NES games. So I have a separate tab for PAL games, but I only have the PAL games I'm interested in, which are the PAL exclusives. And then I have a separate list of the PAL name change games like Probotector, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but I don't have those in my collection database because I'm interested in like knowing them so I could reference them, but it's not something I ever collect. So I have a copy of Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, but it's not even in my collection spreadsheet. Stuff like that is all up to memory. And the same thing with variants. Like, 5 years ago, I didn't know half as many variants as I know now, because I'm constantly learning about new variants, especially since I joined Instagram, which was the best decision ever. Everyone not on Instagram should join Instagram. I know it sounds super lame, but video games are crazy on Instagram.
You've come around full circle on that, man.
Yes.
Wow. That's amazing.
But like, I don't even track variants. I used to just kind of depend on Nintendo Age if I needed to look something up, and even Nintendo Age was a little bit f***ed up in terms of what was correctly documented. But it's come to the point where I think I have to like make my own spreadsheet full of variants because they're not really documented well online anymore, and I don't track them myself, so all I'm going off is memory. And yeah, my list is basically super messed up too, and I'm stressed out about my sets, Johnny.
Yeah, I am as well. And like you talked about the PAL ones. For you guys who don't know, I put a list up on Video Game Sage. See, I do post there once in a while, and I put like my initial findings, and then like didn't paste half of my list, so I feel bad. But this guy OX Defcode went in and he posted a bunch and got us to almost the full list until I was looking today, and then I found a couple more that I didn't have on there. And then back to our list conversation. So I put in like this is for PAL name swaps for everybody. Like if you're collecting PAL games and you want to know, okay, well, which games are exactly the same but had a name swap, and should those go on my list or not? And that's like, do those count as part of the set or not? We'll get into that, what you guys think. But that's like the box name can be different than the name on the cartridge, and the box on the side can be different than the name on the front, which goes back to our discussion about PlayStation games.
Yeah.
So I don't even fucking know how to do it anymore. And I'm just like, man, there is so much, because one guy was like, oh, you're actually missing a few. These games were named like this, but only on the label. You're like, Oh, yeah, I guess I'm only going by what it says on the box, on the spine of the box, because that's what I'd read. But I didn't consider, again, like something I've preached about, like looking up all sides, but like what's on the front of the box, and then like what does the card say? Because they can all be different. Like, and this fun one. Here's a fun example. So we all know World Class Soccer, right, for the Super Nintendo. You guys know this game? Okay, so it's got a big soccer ball on it and some flags on the side, and it is like a common trashy game that you can. It's on the Genesis. It's not a hard game to find. Now, if you want this game in Europe, and you have to think again, PAL, but again, what counts for the sets there? Or how do you do a set there? Do you go by the language? Oh, this one was released in Germany. This one was released in France. This one was released in Italy. This one has the UK, and they aren't all released in the same place. So how do you collect a PAL set? Do you just get one of each game, regardless of region, and mix regions and call it good? Do you have a main region? Anyways, I don't know the right answer. And here's one that like even hurts that one. So Champions World Class Soccer has 3 different names depending on the region you're in. Thankfully, it's all called Champions World Class Soccer, but if you are getting the British one, it's World Class Soccer endorsed by Ryan Giggs. The German one is endorsed by Sepp Maier, and then the French one is endorsed by PGS, Paris Saint-Germain.
Yeah, this all sounds like why people stay to their region, because the information is a lot easier to understand when like we think of Germany and France and Spain as like these, it's like this far off thing. They all speak different languages, and everything in Europe is closer together, and I think easier to process and understand if you live there and are used to it.
Yeah, I mean, and this is one thing I wanted to talk about on the show another time is like biases and like all the biases people have in collecting, especially when they're giving information and the sources that you seek information from. One is that we definitely have a North American bias here, right? And even more specifically, a US bias. Mm-hmm. So it is hard for me to sometimes wrap my head around what it would be like if Tyler spoke a different language, because it would be like if I was in the UK and he was over in Russia. That's like the distance we're talking about. And he suddenly, like you just go across the US and you'd hit like 7 different languages on the way. The US, we're lucky that it's all condensed to just, English. But Europe, it's, all jammed together. And that's why so many of them speak, multiple languages, and then a lot of them speak English now too. But, how hard is that? And how hard is it to like gather information when you have this like extra barrier there? I mean, I went to France just, on vacation, and, this is like with my iPhone and being able to translate and knowing a little French. It was the hardest to know and get around. That was just like to get through restaurants and get on public transportation. And we're not talking about an endeavor, which requires super detailed knowledge like collecting and building sets and knowing what a list looks like. So could you imagine doing that over a continent that has, as many languages as Europe does?
Yeah, I've always said that I feel lucky that I don't read Japanese, because if I did, my collection would be twice the size it is now. Right? Like if I could process all of those lists, then it would be all over. So I'm fortunate that I am a one language guy, because then I'm happy with my English language games.
Well, but part of the thing about PAL games, a lot of them have just like the English title sitting on them. So do some of the Asian games. And it's like, I don't want to call them Japanese because there's so many different regions over there. I don't know all the differences. That's the other thing. Like we talk, we're all relatively big collectors, right? Like I'm not going to say, I don't want to pat our backs too big, but respectively, we have large collections, been doing it for a while, fairly well informed. But if you told me to tell people something about collecting in Japan or the subsequent regions, or, hey guys, what do you know about Comboy? Oh, I don't know enough about Comboy to have more than a 2-minute conversation about it. I don't know how to help you guys. So, there's just, my knowledge falls off a cliff the minute you cross the ocean.
But you know who knows about Comboy?
No?
Read the Game Shark.
Yeah.
I read the Game Shark. Well, I mean, that's one of the nice things. As few nice things there are about social networks nowadays is that you have people who know, and you can find experts about certain things and like rely on them. But anyways.
Well, and it also doesn't help that there is a bias towards the U.S. market in the market, right? Like,
right.
For by and large, the US version of a game, and there are certainly exceptions, and I'm sure you're running into some of those exceptions in your PAL collecting, Johnny, but by and large, the US version of a game is the most valuable, and so people tend to gravitate towards those games, educate themselves on those games, and so there's less incentive. People are monetarily incentivized often, and so there's less incentive for people to educate themselves on foreign releases of games because they are less monetarily valuable.
Well, I'm not sure if that's exactly true for like European Super Nintendo. I think on rate, they probably rate a little bit more expensive than US games. At least they did for a while. I know that. I don't know where they're at exactly right now because, again, Super Nintendo is a large set.
But some of the PAL sets aren't large, though. So I've seen some people with specific like SNES sets for some European country, and they'll be like, here they are, all 150 games. It's like, oh, you guys missed out on a lot there, didn't you?
Perfect. So I'm glad you said that for a specific region. Now, do you think that's a set? So that's kind of some of the stuff I want to talk about. I'm glad we got into like, what is the world? We talked about sets, but I like that this conversation is about how do we collect in the world. Maybe that's even a better title for the episode, Tyler. So maybe like we'll consider that. How do you collect there? A little more organic. How would you even classify? Like, how do you call this a set? Is it fair to call it a set? Like North
Everything's
American?
a set. Every time someone says set, what they really mean is subset, and you just have to add a bunch of adjectives to it until it correctly describes what they're talking about.
I agree with you, actually.
Well, and I think a better, you touched upon it earlier, I think always the region is, like the physical region is a better qualifier than the format, right? So rather than saying like, oh, I collect NTSC, to actually say I collect US is more accurate.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with specializing in one region, because that's exactly how, if you collect Detective Comics, you probably collect American Detective Comics. If you collect coins, you probably collect American coins, or you might specialize in like British coins or British stamps, but you're probably not collecting everything from like Angola and Madagascar just because you collect one object.
No, I don't think that would be wise. And look, as we talked about how big the world is and how the knowledge disparity is and how hard it is to know everything, which it's impossible to, even on one specific hobby, as niche as video game collecting is. Even if you limit that down to a system, to know everything about the world of it is pretty hard. So you definitely have to set up limiters, right? You have to create these walls to insulate yourself from the noise, right? And that's something we recommend when people do, like even when you are collecting a full set of North American Super Nintendo games, primarily US releases, if that is your objective, we talk about chunking that up into bite-sized portions and rewarding yourself as you hit milestones to avoid burnout. Because if you try to take it all in, it's overwhelming. It's too much. And, you shouldn't worry about that. But at the same time, I wanted to touch on this, like the idea of sets are bullshit. They're nonsense the way that we have, and not that people shouldn't do it, but the way people defend them is ridiculous to me. The idea of right and wrong when it comes into set collecting, what counts and what doesn't.
I'll tell people they're wrong. If they're discluding something for the wrong reason, then I will get on someone and say,
faulty logic is different.
Yeah, that's the thing. If their excuse is an actual lie, I will get up on that.
Stadium events is a variant of World Class Track Meet. That's the classic example.
Yeah,
that is not a reason
one,
to
that is
discount
what's
it.
in
That
my
doesn't
head
make
right
any
now.
sense.
Yeah.
Is it? But well, here let's talk about that. Isn't it? Why not? If you said I have one of every game for the U.S. Super Nintendo, I could play any game on the Super Nintendo, or I'm sorry, on the NES, and you've got World Class Track Meet. Are you incorrect?
I mean, if you have,
Are you incorrect? Yes or no?
No,
Yes.
but then why do you have Super Mario Duck Hunt in your set if you have Super Mario and Duck Hunt?
But that's being specific, right? If you said I have a set, I can play every game on the Nintendo, and I have a physical cartridge that
Can't play
allows me to
stadium
do that.
events. Part of
You can't-
the experience of stadium events is seeing the stadium events title screen and going, "Whoa, I have this." So you're not getting that stadium events experience when you boot up World Class Track Meet.
But that's not really playing the game, and we know titles aren't as important because the title could be different on the label, on the side, and on the top of the box. You could have 3 different titles on one game.
But it's not a. If you are talking about, is it a variant of World Class Track Meet? No, it's the first release. The
But that
leading
person-
release is not the variant.
But that person didn't make that argument. That's not what that person said. So this is theoretical person who I'm defending. And by the way, I'm just devil's advocating here, so people don't try to flame me. Sometimes we have to take opposing.
That's what Tyler and I were talking about. Like why it's a lie is because the variant is not. The variant is the preceding release, not the preceding release.
First of all, I disagree with that. I just call everything variants. I don't care.
Okay. So we'll get into that topic in a second. But now stick on this though. If a person has, and they say, I've got a set of Nintendo games, I can play every single game, and I have a physical cartridge for them. Are they wrong? If they don't have stadium events.
So again, this is science and opinion and all that kind of thing. In my opinion, whatever set you're building, it's a subset of something, but the thing that defines a distinct video game is having a unique title. So I think
Even if the titles aren't consistent on the labeling?
even if the titles aren't consistent on the label, because it doesn't matter if it's Namco Tekken 2 or just Tekken 2, there's still just one copy of that game. It's not like
Well, you could
there's
also-
a Namco Tekken 2 version and a Tekken 2 version, and you're just deciding whether both count or one counts.
You could also just define it one deeper and talk about the code base. Is the code base different?
So that's where it comes into play for me, because I personally don't care about code versions because there's a ton of like bug fix carts. There's probably like 4 versions of Link's Awakening. I'm not going to count all those for the set. And then the bigger one is publisher variants. Republished games, I complain about this a lot lately. They're so inconsistent with sets, it's ridiculous. A lot of rare ones just randomly appear on set lists, like Accolade Centipede is the one I always come back to. And it has a different title screen, so it is a different code base. It's not going to like exactly match up to the other cart, but it's the same exact game. So why do we include that on set lists?
Okay, well then same thing. If World Class Track Meet, if you put it in and you say the title screen and you get to the actual gameplay, is it the same game? Do you get a different play experience by having that game? Does that game do something different? Does it give you a different gameplay outcome? Is it a different game? Is it a different game? That's what I'm saying. So you're saying I can play every game. I have a set of every Nintendo game I can play. How is that different?
It's too the gameplay is too subjective because Greatest Hits Jet Moto 2, another random game we bring up a lot on the show. Greatest Hits Jet Moto 2 and Jet Moto 2 are not the same game.
They are not, and I think you need both to have the set there
See,
because
I
there's
don't.
there's enough difference in gameplay.
I feel
like,
you're
there's
collecting,
more-
You're collecting a different set at that point. I feel like you would have to have a a very deep understanding of like patches and stuff throughout PS lifetime, and then like start collecting every code variant at that point.
Right, that's a perfect answer, Tyler, because that's exactly what I'm driving at when I say sets are bullshit, right? Because your level of knowledge can sometimes determine what you're going to call a set. And sometimes you have too much information versus someone. They're not necessarily wrong, but you might have more info than them. But sometimes it doesn't matter. Like Jet Moto 2, does it actually matter? Probably not.
It does. I think Greatest Hits has a better frame rate. It matters.
Okay. So what you are saying is you should exclude the original Jet Moto 2 and only slot in the Greatest Hits one?
No, I just want the Black Label one. Because it's my collection versus what I'm actually going to play.
Consistent. Your rules don't make sense.
The problem is you can go too far down the rabbit hole with something like World Class Track meets Stadium events, because you could also say, you can say, well, 3-screw and 5-screw stadium events are technically different, and you could go into the chips. No one does this, but eventually I imagine someone might start collecting chip variants. There are date codes printed on chips. You can have a Super Mario Brothers probably produced in every month of the NES life cycle if you wanted to.
Oh, well, I can't wait till like some of the earliest Super, like when people go hard in cart collecting and start opening them up and saying, like, this is a true first print because it has the earliest date code.
Yeah.
Right. And then it'll start trading for more money than sealed ones because you can't tell.
Right. So, and that's kind of my point, right? And that's some of the stuff. And this is just the stuff I want people to think about. I hope you're hearing us argue and you're thinking about all the nonsense that goes on. And like, okay, so, players' choices usually have revisions, but those don't count, right? We all usually just say, no, I don't have players' choice games. I don't want all those garbage titles. And we call them garbage titles, but like every players' choice game on like Super Nintendo is like a pretty good game. Like mostly,
they're million
like
sellers,
right? They're so they were like usually some of the best properties of the system. It's not like a budget release.
It's almost natural to discount budget labels because they're intentionally made ugly so that basically to grab attention on shelves. I feel like it's almost done to mock collectors at a certain point, though, with just like how ugly the like completely red cases on the PlayStation consoles now, just like screaming that you're a poor person.
The player's choice ones in PAL for Super Nintendo were sweet. They're like red boxes. They like make like this nice red line. They look pretty cool.
You've seen we're getting off topic, but the Sega Genesis PAL ones, I think Australian, Aussiesoft maybe, they have like the platinum and gold collections.
Yeah.
It looks like the Criterion collection of friggin' video games, and it's a budget label. They look beautiful.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, it's weird. Like even the US Super Nintendo games, like I don't like the big badge on the front, but on the spine the badge is down, where like I don't love the Super Nintendo like Super Famicom symbol that's like the light gray in the corner of the box. It does nothing for me. That doesn't mean it's like the button layout or whatever, but you have like the nice like gold badge, and I think those look nice all together.
I think that's one exception, because even the console before that, the NES Classic series, those look like garbage.
Yeah, and they weren't consistent. Like, and then like Konami had like the Blades of Steel with like the red border around the box for some reason, and like the Punch Out, which is like what is going on here, guys?
Johnny, I want one of each title. Video game title is what I count.
Okay, so title of the video game is what you want, even if that title had a revision.
Yes.
On the budget label. So does that mean on the budget label, then you need to get, if it's a new title on the budget label, do you have to own one of those for the complete set? Go. Stefan and Tyler both answer.
No, because I don't want any budget labels. It's just my personal opinion.
Stefan.
Yeah, I collect and I stage my sets, right? So let me take Genesis for example. It was okay. I need everything in a hard clamshell. All right, we got that. All right, now I need everything in paper boxes. All right, we got that. And so like that's how I stage sets, right? And so it's like GameCube. I don't have a full set of Player's Choice. It's just but I still like refer to. Usually, I'll say Black Label for that qualifier. So I say I have a US Black Label set, and that's essentially one of every game in Black Label.
But answer that question though. If a budget label has a different title, but is a game that is already in the set, in the Black Label set, but they changed the title for some dumb reason, and why would they do this? Who knows? But in the budget label, they changed the title, like completely changed the title. Do you need to have that game to have the whole set?
I would say yes. Or also the same thing if like they did a budget release that was like a 2-pack on a single disc, I would also consider that a different release, right?
Right.
So
See, I've got like this flow chart of what I want to collect, and probably the first step of the flow chart is if it's a budget release or like a box set, just don't count it. It's something totally different. Just forget about it because it gets too complicated, especially with modern consoles.
What about Mario Duck Hunt? Is that a separate? That's
this
not a budget label.
This is one of the things where I only count it because it's so ingrained in collecting nature that I would be like the one asshole hipster if I was trying to be the guy who says that NES multi-carts are kind of their own thing and they shouldn't be part of the set, because no one would agree with me at that point. Like people will say like, oh, player's choice, Super Monkey Ball, Sonic Heroes. I mean, that doesn't really count. But, Super Mario Duck Hunt has been in the set forever. I also don't think Racer Mate Challenge 2 should be considered as part of the quote-unquote unlicensed set. I think it's kind of its own thing. There was people who agreed with me on that at some point, but then
I agree.
Over time, it kind of just got put into the list, and no one even thinks about it. They're just like, oh, gotta spend $100 on a Racer Mate Challenge 2, and then never think about it again.
Nope,
Tyler, I want to go back to Mario Duck Hunt for a second, just because I have a question. Would your opinion change as to it being part of the set if it was unreasonably expensive?
I mean, no, not really. I mean, I would just put it in I would just keep it in the set. I hate when people
But if it was like stadium events money.
Yeah, I know. I hate when people make choices based on the price of something. Like just be happy with your almost complete set. You don't have to have everything for your life to be complete.
That's kind of what I was getting at. There are certainly many examples of caveats where someone will justify something not being part of the set because it's expensive, and I was just curious if that
me and Johnny don't have stadium events. Johnny's happy with it. It eats me a little every day that I'm alive.
Doesn't bother me, and I'm happy to say that. Again, throw my caveat. Yeah, I got a full set minus stadium events. And that's not even true. Like again. That isn't a true statement because I also don't have all of the Pan Asian games. I don't have
monster.
I don't have all the unlicensed games. I don't know, and people's data. And we talk about that's like some of what the data on all that stuff. What actually came here? What was physically actually released? That's the other thing people get into. Was it actually released a retail release? Did it ever hit store shelf? Like we create a lot of fucking caveats to tell people what a set is to get people in line. And what we said at the beginning of the show is what I like best. I'm okay on correcting faulty logic, but I'm not okay telling people how to if their logic is sound, I'm not okay telling them that their set isn't a set. But if you got weird logic, then it's a discussion, right?
And have a consistent thing that you at least try to stick to. I'm not consistent with anything. I know that, but I've been saying for years on this show, I think all budget labels should be thrown into a giant fire. So when I see Super Monkey Ball Sonic Hero sell for $6,000, I'm like, I'm so happy. I never want that. And you don't have to be like, oh, you're just saying that because you don't want to spend $6,000 on a cardboard box.
Yeah, which, you shouldn't want to spend that. But if you did, hey, good on you. We ever find out and ever come out who actually bought those?
Tyler, I think, knows one of them, right?
I've heard, I know someone who knows the buyer of the first one, who was apparently a major GameCube collector. So he wasn't buying it as an investment or anything. I have no idea who bought the second one though. And maybe third one.
Yeah. So, I mean, and there's a lot of, people assume things like that go for just full set collectors, but one of the things that triggered part of my set thinking and furthered me into it is there was a game that just sold on the GBA. It was a beat 'em up that was kind of hard to get, but it doesn't come up very often. And then suddenly it was $100 each time, and then suddenly it sold for $1,000. And you're like, what the hell just happened? And I found out the person who bought it, they collect beat 'em ups. They were finishing their set of beat 'em ups across all gaming systems. they have their own imagination for what a set is based on a completely different criteria by genre. And like way back in the day, early when I was writing my silly little blog, that was like one of the things I identified collector types and like genre types, and they will have their own idea of what a set is based on they all have different rules. And this was one of these people, and it all comes down to the same thing for all these people. There are sometimes those games you just don't find, and the minute you get into an eBay fight with one of them and you need to complete that set that you've made in your mind, more money than you want to spend will be spent. That's how that works.
You know what, Johnny? If all those other types of collectors that aren't like theoretically in their brain trying to make a full set, they don't have any of these problems, because if you just collect beat 'em ups, you don't care that it's called Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles 2 on the NES in the UK. You're just like, well, I've already got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. I'm fine with that. And if you collect publishers, you don't care that there's a publisher variant of Accolade Centipede. I only collect Natsume games.
Yeah,
that's a pretty big assumption, Tyler.
Yeah, that might not be true. Like, you might be like, oh man, I have all them beat 'em ups, but man, they gave it a different name over there. It's the same game. Again, like stadium events and world-class track meet, Tyler, keep consistent to your rule. They might be like, it's got a different name. I need it.
I need all of the things. I love beat 'em ups so much could easily be.
Yeah, you're right. I'm totally wrong with that. And you know what? When you collect smaller sets, you have way more incentive to go super deep into variants and just,
I think the only collecting sort of, I don't want to say category, but the only type of collector who's really safe from this are I just want to collect what I want to play. Like, I think that if you're looking for like safety in collecting, like that's as probably as middle of the road as you can possibly get. Like,
that's faulty too, right? Because like, people would say, well, this is my set of stuff I want to play. And it's like, well, that's like your collection, but that isn't a set that you can go out and describe to other people. Like, that's one of the things I want to ask you guys about. So I'm glad, man, you guys are hitting some of my points without me getting to them. That's great. So, Stefan, if someone came and brought you that list and said, this is my set, are you going to sit down and agree with them that is a set, or do you need to be like, no, that is your collection? What do you think? Because I'm on the side, okay. I'll say my position. I'm on the side saying, that's not a set, guy. That's your personal collection, and that's great, and you made some rules to establish what you were going to buy, which is a good thing, but that's not a set, because I think a set needs to be something that there at least needs to be some sort of public agreement on.
Yeah, so internally, I would absolutely agree with that sentiment. However, a person who did something like that, who brought me a list and insisted that this was a set, I don't know that I would want to have that argument with them. I don't know.
I want to listen to that argument with Johnny. This isn't a set. What are you talking about, kid?
Get the
you guy.
What are you, a f***ing child? Get out of here.
Literally just says Kirby Superstar Contra 3.
That's not even the name. You could have at least put a comma between these things. Yeah, just like one big run-on sentence of games. Just like, get out of here. Yeah, no.
So that it's like super subjective. Like, hey, dude, this can't be on this list of games you like to play. This game sucks.
Yeah.
That kind of brings me to something that I wanted to talk about before we got off topic of why people compartmentalize sets, Johnny. And it's because of my favorite term that you ever taught me. Do you know what that is?
No, I don't.
The narcissism of minor differences.
Yes. Well, I mean, that's collecting. That's all collecting is. But go on.
No, just that there are certainly people who put guardrails on various types of sets because they want an excuse to be better than you, and that it's a Stadium Events has to be part of the set because if it's not, then you're just a poor, right? Like there's also that sort of like, oh well, only people who can't afford CIB collecting collect card only. Like that's a big one that I hear a lot.
Oh, for sure. And but again, people's goals are different, and that's why set collecting is hard, and that's why defining a set is hard, because people are coming at it with different things. And can you imagine, like, if you had like every Nintendo game and your list was just off the cart names and then the box names are different? Like, you may not even agree, like, what the naming conventions are. But but that's why I was saying, I think that's part of the reason I think there needs to be some public agreement. Like, you can come up to me and tell me anything you have as a set, and like, what we say on the show remains true always. Collect how you want to collect. They're like, you can take our opinions, but that's what they are. But everything else is kind of bullshit. If you don't have like the agreement, like I said, then you will just be stuck in these unending conversations with people going back and forth. And there's no way, there's no fact, there's not like, there's no one out there. There's not a governing body, yes, of
But
course.
there should be.
Oh, yeah. And I want to
Which
be,
is why we're announcing today that we're starting a governing body of game collecting.
But I want that. This is what I'm talking about with this catalog. You make the IUCHI catalog, give every game a number, and that's the Bible. That's it. We're all just using that now.
That's Tyler. That's not that I don't want that. I do want that. But every time I think about it more, like, you don't understand how, like, I'll have to show you guys what the starting list looks like, because it's not a list, right? It's a bunch of referential tables that need to be thrown into a database. But like, when I realized, I'm like, oh my God, I need to have a name for, I need to have a name for label for left side of the box, right side of the box, top of the box, front of the box, back of the box. Most of the time it's going to be 100% the same, but the times that it isn't is going to be important. And then when I'm like, okay, now it needs a name, like, and assuming that I'm going to use the US because that's my regional bias, like, how do I pick which region is like the core name of the thing? Unless you can have the ability to select country upon entry to it, mine would just be from the US, and then there'd be a column header that says name for PAL 1, 2, 3. Because, or like, it's like it can't just be name and PAL. It'd have to be name PAL Germany.
It can't even exist. You would just have to have a link from one database row to another database row, or like multiple database rows, because there would just be other entries in the database, the PAL games.
Right. Well, that's why I'm saying it would be, it's a bunch of referential tables that would, be together. That would then populate these lists when you wanted to look up a game. But if I looked up, say, World Class Soccer in this database, I would want to tell me all the names on the label, and then tell me what the names on the label, like, and then like click a flag for PAL, and then see all the same info for PAL, and then like in Japan, and then, and I would want to build that as complete as possible, and then keep adding to it. And then known variants, like, what if in later releases, like, a comma is removed or something? Who knows? Or if they change the art just a little, like, holy shit, can you imagine how deep and absurd it would have to be? I mean, I don't think you start off there. I think you start small and then work your way out, but it's a big undertaking and goes beyond just sets.
I agree, and there's no one doing it, I don't think, because there's sites like VG Collect or wherever all these giant game databases. Moby Games is probably the closest we have to a legitimate game database, but they don't care about collector stuff. They just are trying to document every single game that's ever existed.
Yeah.
Well, and they're big on like on credits lists, which is nice, but that's also the reason why I know they're not accurate, because they don't have all my games in there.
Oh. Well, another thing, I mean, this is getting off the topic of collecting, but mobile games will never be documented. Like, it's too easy to make a game and have nobody download it, that, like, the concept of every game needing to be archived and documented, I think, is just pointless at this point.
Well, and there's also so many different platforms that there's just not enough cultural awareness of. Like, for instance, the last 2 years, I've been working on the Facebook Instant platform, which is kind of a mobile platform and kind of not. And so, those games, when Facebook decides to say, we're done supporting this, then all of those games, and by the way, there's like 250 new games a day on that platform. So yeah, there's just going to be like tens and tens and tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands of games that are just going to evaporate, and no one will ever see them again.
Quick question. Do you think you could have just said millions?
No, because I don't know that we have millions yet.
Hundreds of
millions
thousands?
of games. That's a lot of games for a platform I've never heard of.
I'm just making because there's a lot of tens and tens and tens and tens and tens and tens.
No, you're right. I could have said 100. I know there's hundreds of thousands. I don't know if they've hit millions yet.
I like that you went with tens. I just thought it was funny. I'm making a joke, people. I don't actually care. All right, let's get back into sets. What counts and what doesn't. And by the way, when we were talking about that example of a budget label that had the name, ESPN Extreme Games on the PlayStation became One Extreme.
Yeah, that's the one I immediately thought of when you say that. I hate One Extreme. I hate it even more because it's always alphabetically first in the list. So I just have to see it, and it just... Because I know that it's not at the top of my list, but every time I see another list, I just see it, and I'm like, no, get out of this list.
You're a budget label. Get out of here. You don't count. People should know.
Title changes are the only things that matter, except you.
Yes. And do you know why the title changed?
Because the sequel was too extreme, or did they lose a license?
Nope, they lost the license. The license with ESPN expired.
Great.
Yep, and that's why it changed. Cool, right?
So I wonder if, like, and we can continue to have the conversation on what does and doesn't count for sets, but I wonder if a actual helpful conversation for this audience would be to talk about some sort of caveats that we find acceptable or acceptable ways to explain that caveat, like when we're talking about, saying the actual, country versus the format, right?
Oh,
like
yeah,
saying,
that's all on the table.
I just think that that's a worthwhile conversation that I think is probably going to be the most helpful. So I just want to make sure that we, get to that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, that's on the list of things to talk about. I just wanted to look, this episode is just a thought experiment. This is like why I said I literally didn't want to prep you guys too much. I just wanted to come in and have an honest conversation about sets and see where everyone's head got to. Because the nice thing about this podcast, and I'll pat ourselves on the back, is we do come at this from different angles. We don't always line up, and the thrust of our collecting is not always the same. So that means we have different caveats for things we're counting and things we're not. So I like that we can, and we all own sets, so that's relevant as well. So
we're also good at having differing opinions and like being okay afterwards.
Yeah, not the whole world doesn't need to get along always. You just be a little disrespectful and then forgive each other and move on. Not how the rest of the world does it.
I don't. What was the topic that you and I just like fought tooth and nail on air?
Oh, it was. I forget exactly how you were wrong, but you were. Oh gosh, what was it? It was.
I don't remember what it was. And but like the retrospective last year, I even brought it up as like one of my favorite episodes because it kind of showed the audience how to fight and be okay.
Yeah. It's okay to disagree. Oh God, what was it? It'll come to me later. It's like on the tip of my tongue. But let's go more for some weird caveats. And this is one I've brought up before on the show, but like this is a nice refresher. So, Genesis set, gentlemen, 32X count? Yes or no? Is it part of the Genesis set?
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about this. No,
I've come around on this because of you. Okay. You've actually talked me into, like, I still don't have all of the 32X games, but I consider them Genesis games because it says fucking Genesis on the label.
Yep, says it on the box, Tyler.
Okay, why does it count? What's the
it says
definitive
it on the box.
reason that it counts?
It says it on the box, and you need a Genesis to play it. It
has the Genesis branding on it.
It's not a standalone console. It must be played on a Genesis. It is just a subset of Genesis.
I'm thinking there's got to be another example where I could apply is every PlayStation 1 game also a PlayStation 2 game then? Or
maybe
is every Master System game a Genesis game?
But there's not PlayStation 2 branding on PS1 games.
You take the 2 off, it's all just PlayStation.
But they didn't. So it's a different thing.
So here's an example of something similar, Tyler, that actually I do think counts in two different sets, is those fucking Burger King games. Because they're stylized as both Xbox and Xbox 360 games.
What are they? How do they work? Like, how do they technically work? Because they're the only three games that are like that.
They are Xbox games, but it says Xbox, but in the 360 branding format, which drives me crazy.
Yeah, I remember always being very confused about what these were. If they were just like backwards compatible, or they had two different types of software on one disc.
Anyway, my point is those are a example similar to my same sort of thought process as the 32X stuff as to why games that would count in multiple sets.
So let's go a little more. So the stupid 32X gets messy too, right? Because it doesn't just have one brand of games. It then has the tall 32X CD games. So what do you guys do with those? Are those their own thing? Is that its own set? Or is that part of 32X?
You're saying that might be in the Genesis set, the 32X set, and the Sega CD set?
I'm saying it might, like, I'm going to go.
Because I think it might. I'm setting you up to agree with you.
Yeah. Well, no, because I'm going to go grab one and see if Genesis is on the packaging of that one or not. Because if it isn't, does that mean it's its own thing? Is it its own set? Is it like this weird subset that stands alone that no one talks about and just lumps it in with 32X because 32X is on there? Like, what do we even do with this stuff?
I would guess most people do it the way I do it, which is 32X and Sega CD are their own thing. And those 5 games, I just put in both the 32X and the Sega CD list. And I put a little note these are also in the Sega CD set.
Yeah. Don't buy these 3 times.
Very strange. But wait, how do those are basically Sega CD games that require a 32X, right? Maybe I removed those from my 32X list. Even though it's ridiculous to remove them from my 32X list when they're these yellow boxes that say 32X on them. But they're really Sega CD games.
But there's
it doesn't just require the 32X hardware, it requires a 32X cartridge. So that's
Does it?
There is a cartridge involved.
What cartridge does it have?
Isn't there?
No.
It's just
Really?
CDs. I don't know what
CDs.
it uses the 32X for. I don't know how any of that works. There's so many wires and stuff.
So, and then think about this one. There's the Fahrenheit game. I forget the exact title. I'll grab it, but it's the only Sega CD game like this. So it's in the standard jewel box, right? The long box, and then it's got yellow halfway down the spine for 32X gaming, and then you have the blue long CD boxes. It's a very confusing set, and that's why I usually just say and you need the there isn't a standalone really Sega CD set that doesn't have a Genesis built into it. So you really, to me, it's all part of the Genesis set.
I would have those long boxes live with Sega CD just because they're the correct size.
Mine are a bridge. So mine goes Genesis 32X boxes, the cardboard, the yellow boxes into the into the Sega CD cardboard boxes, and then into the standard jewel case boxes.
You can tell that I don't collect Sega CD because I thought that there was a cartridge in those boxes too.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
You should, though. Sega CD is awesome.
What do you do with the black Game Boy Color games? Are those in the Game Boy set? Because they'll technically work on Game Boy?
They came in a Game Boy Color box.
But and that's just what's on the box.
In the lifetime of but they were also released in.
But they were released for the Game Boy Color.
Correct.
Okay, what about Pokemon Yellow, which is, I think, technically in the code, it's a Game Boy Color game, but it also has a Game Boy box.
It's for the Game Boy because it came in a Game Boy box. That's how I do that.
Well, my Sega CD games all come in a Sega CD box, not a Genesis Sega CD box.
But no, your 32X ones come in a 32X Genesis box.
That is correct. The 32X ones genuinely have the Genesis.
They're all just add-ons.
Well, this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying, and this is why I want to talk about sets. We do this a lot. We own a lot of sets, and we don't necessarily agree, and we do this a lot and think about this a lot. So how is anyone supposed to come up and then when you get into these arguments with people and they tell you, no, this is the set, you don't know what you're talking about. And for me, who thinks about this obsessively, like a maniac, I don't want to put any disparaging terms out there, but let's just say it dominates a lot of my free thoughts, and sometimes I've had dreams about it, okay? Because I'm a weirdo. When I think about this much, and then I have someone who hasn't thought about it very much come up and tell me I'm wrong about something, the murder seeps into my eyes and then almost into my hands. And it's just a hard thing to classify. And I think that was really where I wanted to get to on this.
So, Johnny, I did just grab the Fahrenheit box, and There is Sega CD branding and 32X branding. There is no Genesis branding.
Okay, did you grab...
I'm going to go... the Genesis set, then?
Yeah, Well, no, that one I don't have in the Genesis set. That one's in the 32X or in the Sega CD because it is in a Sega CD style box, too. I'm going to go grab the the other one real quick, some of the orange ones. So let's take a look real quick. You guys talk.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Hi, Tyler.
Hey, Stefan. I feel like we're gonna eventually just come down to what is a set? What's the definition of set? A logical grouping of things.
That's why I wanted the conversation to eventually go to like, hey, let's talk about how you should, or like acceptable ways or helpful ways to define your set versus like focusing on what a set is.
Sure. Sega CD games are not part of the Genesis set. Or it sounds like Johnny doesn't even think they are. Only 32X games are, which now you agree with, which is crazy to me. But
I have agreed with that for a while.
Okay.
But if it didn't actually have the Genesis logo right on the box, I wouldn't. But they sure do.
You know what else doesn't say Genesis on it? Outback Joey. That's a Heartbeat personal trainer game.
No. Yeah, I mean, well, yes. And that's a tough call too, because the Heartbeat personal trainer is a Genesis.
A Super Famicom is a Super Nintendo.
No. But like they actually took a physical Genesis, removed the lid, and put a different lid on it.
But they have a different lid, so it's a different object. This is now Theseus's ship. Are we replacing things, and is it the same object?
Yeah. Is the Heartbeat personal trainer a Genesis? I don't know. It does have the Sega branding on it, though. It is a licensed Sega title, so it is a legitimate title. It is not an unlicensed game.
Oh, it's not an unlicensed game. I think it is part of a set of one of games that were released for the Heartbeat personal trainer, because there were going to be more, but they only exist as prototypes.
Yes,
which are some of the coolest goddamn like prototypes you can own. I know some of those high-end people have them.
Talking about whether or not Outback Joey counts as the Genesis set.
I think trying to exclude it is a mistake. I think it's, especially given.
No, I'm not. I'm using your logic against you here because it doesn't say Genesis anywhere on it. And you're counting friggin' 32X games in the Genesis set.
No. It follows because I consider Sega CD as also part of the Genesis set.
Okay, I thought you were discounting Sega CD. All right.
No. I'm not. I think it is a Genesis. The hardware is Genesis. Outback Joey will turn on. If you put it in a Genesis, though, you could say that of a PS1 game and a PS2. So maybe that doesn't hold up. Again, these rules are hard, guys.
I mean, there's no right answer either. It's just how your brain processes logical groupings of things. Because there are some people, wrong people, but you could say that Mike Tyson's Punch-Out is an NES Black Box game because it fits most of the things that go in the Black Box set. Same with like all the Silver Box games. You could count that as one big set.
I count them, and the series games, like that's what I count them as. I know everyone calls them black box, and I use that because it's popular nomenclature, and it helps me describe what I'm talking about to people. But my black box stuff is pushed to the side, along with my Punch-Out, and my Metroid, and my Kid Icarus, and my Rad Racer. Those are all because they are part, like racing series, education series. That's the subset to me, not the color of the boxes.
Popular nomenclature is how we've gotten into some messy stuff with territories, though, right? Like, because honestly, most people use the term PAL as shorthand for European.
Ooh, I had a really good conversation about this, but go on.
Right. And I'm not saying that that's right, because obviously we've just spent like an hour talking about how that's wrong, but that is like part of the reason why we got into this mess in the first place. Just like people have gotten to the point where the mostly North American is shorthand for US, which is funny because US is easier to say. But it's that's how we've sort of gotten into these problems, is because it's easier to talk about for a lot of, especially if you're talking to someone who is not a game collector, right? Like if I say I have a North American set to someone who doesn't collect games, most likely they're going to think, if we are standing in the United States when I'm saying this, they are most likely going to think I mean a US set.
Well, also, if you're talking to someone who doesn't collect games and you say, I have a complete Super Nintendo set, what they're asking is, and they're from the US and this is where they grew up, they're not thinking, well, what about all the European games? Hey, that's weird that you said you have a Super Nintendo set, Stefan, because I'm aware that in Europe, it is also called a Super Nintendo and you don't seem to own those games.
They're going to be like, oh, you mean like a Super Nintendo Superset? Yeah, I had one of those too.
Yeah. Yes. We can get, if we want to go down that road, I've got some of the 32X stuff here that we'll talk about in a second. But if we want to go into communication, which is, as you guys know, I was a comms major in college, it's the main bulk of it, and rhetorical theory and research. But one of my favorite things to talk about is communication and what it means and what is successful communication and what isn't. And it comes down to the goals of the conversation at hand, and the goals and the rules change depending on the audience and the sender. So if we're getting real nerdy here, break out your, comms 300 books. Here we go. So a message is not successful if a receiver does not receive it, right? So that's why I use popular nomenclature. It's not communication. Like if I need you to know what I'm talking about, I'll say the black box games, even if I, in my brain, know that is not right. If depending on the time and like how much of the message I want to convey, depending like what I need to get to you, what the true message is, I will break it down to that, even though it's not correct. It's correct enough to mean the message is successful. So what is more important to me, being 100% factually accurate or having a successful message received? And in communications, we would say the goal is for the receiver to receive the message successfully, right? And then you would layer that in with the most detail appropriate to the situation, and you would go on from there. So it depends, like a lot of that depends on what your intent is. And people do this all the time. We are all part of these little communities, right? In these little speech communities, we throw terms around like black box, and it's a universal term in our community. We all know what that means. But we step outside of our community, say black box, people look at you like you're a dummy. You're like, what? And then you suddenly have to, your message wasn't received. So then you have to start explaining, oh, well, the original Nintendo games that were released came in these black box games. And that's not entirely accurate, right? Because there's some other stuff like, and you're not talking about where it was originally released in Asia. Like you don't get into any of that. You just start giving them enough information to understand what you meant.
Right.
So anyways, communication. If you want to get nerdy about communication with me and talk about comms theory, like deep theory and like how language and, and shared meaning, if you want to get into that kind of stuff, I'm always available for a 3-hour conversation that goes on when we should be sleeping. Those are like my favorite things. It's like one of my big passions outside of game collection is getting nerdy about communications. If you want to have a fight with me, like I know we got a bunch of stodgy old people in here who are like, I hate emojis in speech. And I'm like, I think they should be used in business communications. And people's head really explode.
I do use them in business communications.
Well, they've become far more acceptable in business communications because they relay information quicker. And they allow us to convey emotion, which is a lot of times absent from business speak because we don't know how to professionally include it. And then we talk about what's appropriate and what isn't.
Emotional intelligence has become more important to businesses over the last few years. It's always been important, huh?
Some businesses,
yeah, but so I think part of that is like it's part of that too. Like if I'm using emojis in a business communication, generally my whatever I'm trying to convey is going to be received closer to intended. As opposed to if I didn't. It always comes down to who the audience is for me, like how much of that I'm gonna layer in. But that doesn't have to do anything with like my personal thoughts of what I should be layered in. Anyways, we could don't get me, we're down a way left path. But let's get back to 32X. So Tyler.
Oh my God.
What we're talking about the big cardboard box, not the standard 32X box. And if you want to get real annoyed, everyone go take a look at if you have Doom for the 32X, go look at that. The Genesis is below the 32X, and on every other one of them on the spine, it's above it. It's a super annoying thing.
And the 32X logo is backwards on Doom as well.
Yeah, Doom is the worst thing on there. But if you look at the big cardboard boxes, and for instance, I have Corpse Killer out here, and there's this Corpse Killer Sega CD 32X box. It's a big flip style box. It's as big as a Sega CD jewel case, but it's made of cardboard, very much like the PlayStation long box cardboard ones, like in that vein. Okay, so this does not say Genesis on the spine, but what it does say is licensed by Sega Enterprises Limited for play on the Sega Genesis 32X system. So the trademark is Genesis 32X. Does that change your mind?
Not at all. Because it's not, there's no technical definition of what a Genesis game is you could get me to agree upon that would not make me want to just segment out the 32X games into.
I'm not saying you shouldn't put it at the end of your Genesis set in its own little subsection, but could you say that you have the full Genesis set if you don't have these?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No, these are Genesis games. It says right down for play on the Sega Genesis 32X system. What are you talking about?
That's the Sega Genesis 32X system.
What
I don't want to
about
collect
these-
Sega Genesis
what-
32X games. I want to collect
about
Sega
these
Genesis
ones?
games.
What about these ones? Brutal. It says for play on the Genesis.
I mean, what
And it
about
says 32X
Nintendo
underneath
games?
it.
If you're collecting the full NES set, you got to have Le Chevalier de... Why did I pick the French one to say? You got to have Tank from the HES game Tank. Another bad one because no one has ever freaking heard of Tank. You have to have Super Turrican. There we go. That's a PAL NES game. It says NES on it, and you don't have it. What the hell? Why are you dividing it into just an American?
No. See, you're look. Your logic. This is where your logic is not holding up here, Tyler, because you just used a different region here, but this is all in the American region. This is going by your rules saying, I just want to stick to everything North American and put myself in this box. So why aren't we doing that here?
I want to stick myself in the North American box, and then within the North American box, I want to stick myself in the standalone Sega Genesis box.
But those are they say they're for play on the Genesis, Tyler, and what more do you need? It says play me on a Genesis. How is that not a Genesis game?
This is totally going off topic. Can you put a 32X game into a Genesis and it will play with missing graphics, or does that only happen if you are missing a cable?
I don't think so, but again, I've never tried that.
Or what if it comes up with a screen that says you need a Sega Genesis 32X to play this game? But that's technically software.
Does something like that.
So it is running on a Sega Genesis when you do that.
We will have to test. Someone tell us what happened.
Wouldn't that validate our argument even more if it was running on a Genesis?
Yeah, that would definitely be in favor of your argument. I just think it would be an interesting point to add to the conversation if it technically runs on a Genesis. Because I think Game Boy Color games will technically run on a Game Boy and say, hey, idiot, you need a Game Boy Color.
It would also depend. It would inform the conversation as to what was generating that message. If the console is generating the message versus the cartridge.
I think it'll be the cartridge because the console was made in 1989.
Okay. You guys want some more confusing messaging? So I've got Batman Returns here, and it does not say on the box Genesis except for in the trademarks. It talks about the Genesis trademark and stuff in the legalese in the small white print, but it doesn't have Genesis on the box or anything. It just says Sega and then Sega CD, welcome to the next level. It's telling you that you've bumped up, kinda, right? But then you get onto the disc and it says Sega Genesis, and these, again, it talks about the trademarks again, but it says Genesis all over the disc. But it says this game is licensed by Sega for home play on the Sega CD system only.
That is terrible.
But yeah, right. So, and then even the instructions on Corpse Killers say Genesis. So the Batman Returns ones, they don't get into that. They stick pretty strictly to it being a Sega CD and not just a Genesis. So yeah, I don't know how to feel about all.
Clearly, Batman Returns is its own set. That's the only logical conclusion.
No, but the same language is on Corpse Killer in the blue Sega CD box.
Also its own set. Let's get crazy, Johnny.
Because the Corpse Killer, so if you don't know the Sega CD boxes that these cards, so if you have Corpse Killer and you've got the 32X box, it's like got the yellow 32X spine on it. But then there's a blue one that's just Sega CD, which then has all the Sega, it has the same language, so which is different. So like, how do we parse this? Like, what are we supposed to do with this information?
I think you're a bigger fan of grouping as much information together as possible and parsing it. And what I like to do is make everything into as small of a set as you can realistically get it, and then build whichever sets you want on top of each other.
See, what I would like to do is get everything into a system, right? And then be able to filter down to what I need.
Yeah. See, I don't want to do that because I don't want, an Xbox box set with 3 games in it and the same thing as a Black Label single game. Because I would just always have the box set filter off unless I'm specifically looking for like, I want to see what all the box sets are. Well,
but there should be filters like that, right? There should be like just little checkboxes like, main set, ancillary titles, and then like whatever checkboxes that bring up, like show me all the budget labels, and like calling them budget labels doesn't always work out. But that's just like,
I feel like every single checkbox is going to have so many edge cases and exceptions that people would argue no matter how you tried to categorize things.
Well, of course. And that's what this all is, right? That's the point. No one has like, there's not a governing body. There's no, people just make their rules up. And like, here's another thing I want to talk about real quick. And this is like a thing that gets said to me far too often. It's the exception that proves the rule. Please stop saying that. There are no exceptions that prove the rule. That it's exception to the rule. It's an exception to the rule. Like, you made a rule, but we have these few exceptions. There's caveats. That's why exceptions don't prove rules.
Well, the fact that there's an exception means that there was a rule to accept to. I think that's what the saying means.
Yeah. Yes, but people have conflated those two things, right? It's one of the little idioms that we've gotten wrong over time, and people have just accepted it. So you get this like weird message. Exceptions don't come up and tell me, well, it's the exception that proves the rule. That's not how proof works.
There's no rules. This whole world is chaos, especially with the market right now. Like, everything in game collecting is chaos, but this has always been chaos.
Yeah, yes. This has always been a chaotic front, but like in the world in general, please don't walk up to people and say, exception that proves the rule. Stop it. Stop that.
I mean, none of this matters because set collecting is dead.
Set collecting is dead. All that matters is first print NES games. Anyone who gets that reference is cool in my book.
I want to get into that in just a second, but let's go into what Stefan asked. So, because we've had a kind of a long talk about this, and we could keep battling back and forth. I think we brought up some interesting points and food for thought, which is what I really just wanted us to do. But let's talk about what are some helpful things for people to know. Like, what would you do to explain what a set is? Like, if you're talking to someone who kind of like, let's assume that your audience is like a basic collector. I don't want to say basic, like basic, bad term, but someone who is in the collecting world, right? They know what assume that their level of knowledge is already a collector, but not at your level. So what's a good way to go about describing, like, what's some useful hints? Stefan, you got some ideas.
Yeah. So, I mean, my first one, like I said, I think I've said it twice now already, is that when you're talking about which territories you're collecting, like, use the name of the country versus the format of the signal. Right. So if you collect US games, say US, not NTSC, because that's broader than you think it is. Or don't say North American, because it's physically broader than just the US. So if you are going to say that you collect for a specific country's format, just name the country when you're talking about it versus the format.
Yeah, and I think that works to a point, right? I think it's okay if you say North American, actually. I think it's okay if you say PAL, if people understand what that means. But I think you could then just go one more specific, like, I collect PAL, but primarily I like to get all the German games, and then anything that wasn't released, it didn't have a German release, I go and I collect those as well. But I prefer the German one first.
Sure,
or something.
but I'm trying to also
Yeah.
I'm also shooting for brevity here. So like, it took you a paragraph to explain that versus like,
Yeah. Yes, but I'm assuming you're having a conversation. That's it. Like, I'm not talking like a one-off response to someone. It's not a zinger on Twitter.
Right.
You're having an actual conversation.
Got it.
I would say I would not specify any of it. Honestly, I would if it's like a normal collector and we're not like getting into it like you and me, Johnny, and I'd be like, going into all these adjectives when really specifying something specific. I would either say, yeah, I've got an Xbox set, or maybe if I really didn't want to seem like an asshole, I would say, oh yeah, I've got a Black Label Xbox set, and I would let the US be implicit, and the fact that I don't have every big box DDR Ultra Mix does not really matter in terms of the conversation. They don't need to know that.
Yes, it does. You comment.
It's do you have every big box dance bundle, Stefan?
Hell
Including
yes,
both
I do.
DDR Ultra Mixes?
I certainly do.
Oh my god.
I watched him buy them. It was gross.
Just to be clear, for anyone who's not into Xbox, there are 4 DDR Ultra Mixes, but the first one has 2 variants. And then there's also a Pump It Up game.
Correct.
Pump it up. You got that Mark Echo in the big steel case?
I sure
you
do.
So do I.
Can I get on a tangent? Because I was thinking about this earlier today. My Mark
Sure.
Echo Collector's Edition, I believe I stole the manual out of that and put it in my regular black box case. But it's technically the same game that's put... No, it's not, because it's in the Big 10. But I have the manual. I have 1 copy of the manual, but 2 things that the manual should belong to. I don't do this all the time, but I've never bought another Mark Echo manual, because in my brain, it's like, I already have it.
You
I
have
have to
it?
put it in the right spot.
You
goes.
can flip it back and forth. Like, you could make each one complete at your whim.
Yeah, like...
Yeah.
What happens then?
I use that exact argument when we're talking about the QVC Maximum Carnage. That is the exact same game or it's the exact same thing except for one has a Genesis game in it and one has a Super Nintendo game in it. I have both of those games CIB, so I've never felt the need to own a separate version, a separate copy of that when they're identical except for the game inside them. Even like the tray that the game fits in is the exact same dimensions.
Okay, so I have something going on similar to that. I have Bomberman for the Super Nintendo. I have the Party Edition, the big box, and I have the full label variant, without like the standard Super Nintendo formatting on the front. But I don't have like the standard Super Nintendo one. I have the box, but I don't have the cart. But I'm like, I already own 2 Bomberman carts, and I found the box. I'm like, I'll get it eventually when I want to spend like the $50 on this. But I got like the manuals in there, everything. I got a cart set. I could make this the complete one at any point in time. I just haven't, because I feel like it's the only thing different here is the box. Like, but see, we say that, but what if specifically the chipset and all of those ones were different?
Oh man.
Then
30 years from now, everyone's going to figure out all the incorrectly paired games they have, and there's going to be mass panic to get
the
everyone to open
downfall
the
of
games.
WATA. Look at all these games that were incorrectly. These are all imps, all of them.
Also,
Yeah.
Johnny, you bringing up that example is super funny to me because for the vast majority of games, I store the cartridge outside of the box because I want to be able to grab the cartridge off the shelf without damaging the box. So I probably wouldn't even notice that I only have 1 Super Bomberman cart and I have both the small box and the big box. It would just be like, oh yeah, those boxes are empty. The cart's not in there.
yeah,
Oh my god.
yep.
That's funny. Let's be YouTube people, and I want people to send us PMs and let us know if people also do this. I don't do it often, but I can think of like the situations where I've done it, and I think it's funny. Not super related to the topic, but I had to bring it up for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah, but I going back to your example, I like your example. Again, everything, and I love that we get to talk about comms some more. Everything gets back to what your audience is and like how you should communicate. Like Tyler and I, and like a lot of you who contact me in PMs, we're going to go deep, or I will intentionally go deep for someone who is a collector to give them knowledge. I see it as an opportunity to educate. Also, my background in education makes me annoying like that. So I tend to want to teach when I can. Teachable moment. Everyone hates that phrase, but there it is. I've said it, and I appreciate them. But again, depending on who your audience is and like what you want to convey and what you want to get out of the conversation too, that's part of it, right? When you're communicating, like, are you just trying to end the conversation and get out, or do you want it to keep going? Like, what is your goal there? And that depends on the audience, right? Depends who came up to you and how it was presented. So all of that you have to take into account when giving what your answer is. Yeah. I do like being as brief as possible for the most part, though.
Yeah, and you can certainly gauge their interest too. Like the other day, it was at Tyler's wedding. We were sitting at our table eating dinner, and like the people around us, Johnny, I don't remember who else was sitting at the table, but they were just like randomly incredibly interested in like the high-end game market. And like as I was talking, like I was shocked. Like I just kept giving them more because they were just like on the edges of their seats. And I was like, I don't understand why you're so interested in this, but cool. And so like in an environment where normally I would have just been like, oh yeah, whatever, I have a lot of video games. Like we were talking to them for like, I don't know what, like half an hour about like
it was
like a very
Tyler's
granular look at the high end of video games.
Yeah, because when we started that conversation, Tyler, it was with like your boss, the blonde-haired guy.
Yeah.
And then it was the guy whose wife just had a baby, and she showed up a little late. I forget
right, and we were surprised they were there.
Yeah, like we were amazed that they had just had a baby and they were there. It was amazing that they both showed up.
It was great. He was my groomsman, so she was required to show up at least part of the wedding.
Yeah, yes, she showed up, and I was like, wow, you just had your baby, and like you look this put together, so kudos to her for that. And then like being randomly interested in the bullshit that we were talking about. But yeah, like the conversation started out, and Steph and I were talking, and like Stephen, you could tell I was keeping it at the most basic, like I'm at a party and I don't want to bore you with my annoying bullshit. So I'm not going to go, but they kept like trying to eke more out of us. And I was like,
they were like pulling it out. And I'm like, all right, let's go deep.
I'm like, okay. Or people like, oh, you're Tyler's friend from the podcast. And I'd be like, yeah, we both collect video games. We got like a lot of video games, but then they like would ask specific questions and you're like, oh, okay. So like, I know that this is probably boring for the rest of you, so I don't want to get into this, but all right, you asked me, so here we go.
Yeah, and they just kept eating it up. So my point is that you can often read the room and make a judgment call as to where you should stop.
Yeah. So, the assumption though is that you're sitting around with a bunch of other collectors. Try to, if you're with collectors and not just like at a party, try to be kind of, I think people tend to be too vague to other collectors when we could be a little bit more specific, because I think right now, especially now that not all forums are dead, but there's a lot of people who are newer or not as informed as they should be now. And we've all sided on brevity. And I think we're at a point where a lot of the influx into collecting right now needs more information than less.
Well, I mean, there's also like a social issue that like there's a lot of the like storied collectors in this hobby want nothing to do with those people and actively do not want them to succeed in this hobby. And so like are brief on purpose to specifically keep them uneducated.
Yes, that's also true.
I'm hoping that the influx of comic collectors, specifically like really dumb purchases that maybe we'll talk about, at least one of them later in the show, will lead to those types of people who are super motivated to get the best stuff. They will make these super detailed lists of variants and things like that the average video game collector is just like, Super Mario Brothers, I just want one of those. Like there's a bunch of people deep in the hobby is like, yeah, oh yeah, I know all 13 Super Mario Brothers variants or whatever there are in North America. But that they don't necessarily have all of them. They're just like the weirdos who kind of document all that stuff. I'm hoping that the new people bring in a new wave of information, man.
I hope so. I hope there's a passion for that. Because right now, like, again, with the exodus of forums and like people posting and the death of Nintendo Age, there's been an information regression, right? And then like the proliferation of bad information on places like Reddit and Facebook have people less informed than ever. And so I think when conveying just anything about video games, it's gotten harder. And then like, let alone if you're trying to talk about set collecting. Well, let's talk about whether set collecting is dead. But before that, I do want to get just like to what Tyler hinted at. My PAL collecting has got my brain on fire for why we just have muted other systems when we say we have complete sets, like just putting the box around it. Like for me, it's really easy. For Super Nintendo, I was always like, oh yeah, it's like my brain always just assumed Europe and Japan and Asia and the rest, every region that wasn't North America, they had Famicoms or Super Famicoms, but that isn't true. They had, Nintendos and Super Nintendos and N64s. Like the names weren't different. So I don't know why my brain just automatically did that. So I don't know if did you guys do that at all for sets?
What? Say the question again. I did not.
Yeah, sorry, I lost track.
Sorry, maybe I wasn't really super clear. It just like when I was thinking about collecting for PAL, and I had this moment that I realized that in my brain, I had just kind of sanctioned North America as the only thing that was like Super Nintendo and Nintendo. But really, like I just made the rest of the world Famicom and Super Famicom when that wasn't true.
Oh no, I did not do that at all. I just know to ignore those foreigners.
Yeah, so my brain for some reason was just like, all of that is Super Famicom stuff, especially because the Super Nintendo carts over there. Like it's very confusing because it's called the Super Nintendo, but then their carts look like Super Famicom carts. And then in Japan and those regions, it's Super Famicom and they have the same carts as the European and PAL stuff. And you're just like, what is going on? But it's called Super Nintendo. Why didn't we all there's no consistency.
And their Super Nintendos also have the colorful buttons and we have the purple ones.
Yeah. My brain was just like, like the Famicom one. So my brain was just like, that's all Famicom, just Super Famicom. I don't care. And then like, I was thinking about it. I'm like, no, that's actually a Super Nintendo. So if I say I have a Super Nintendo set, I should at least go get those titles that were, unique to releases over there. That's what got me started and like really brought me on this kick. So that was just like my last point there. Now to set collecting. Is it dead? Stefan, is set collecting dead?
I mean, I think it's certainly not the like. I feel like when I started in this hobby 5 years ago now, everyone in my echo chamber who was also collecting were set collectors. Like I feel like not being a set collector it used to be like, well, what do you mean you're not going for the set? Like everyone goes for sets. Like why? What's going on? Like whereas like it's not an exception to the rule now to just like buy what you want or doing subsets. Like when I started seeing people doing a lot of subsets, I kind of went, huh. That's weird. They're not collecting sets, So I think it's become, especially now on the high end where, there's such a big focus toward collecting key titles. I think that collecting sets is more of a niche than it ever has been before, or at least for a number of years.
What do you think, Tyler?
I'd say I'd mostly disagree. I know that I see, obviously, some newer speculator type people coming in and they're only going after the key stuff. And then I do see more people kind of burnt out on set collecting who have sold off and they're just going after the stuff they actually like now. But on the other hand, if you go on places like Reddit full of like the garage sale crowd and the thrift store crowd, everyone wants a set. They don't want an NES set, but they'll be like, yeah, I want the Wii U set because it's like $1,500 for the entire set. And if I chip at that over time, that's super attainable. Or they're going for 32X because it only has like one expensive game. Or they're going for, Xbox or something that maybe has a lot of games and is cheap to chip away at. And it's not as intimidating as, Super Nintendo complete in box. I think there's definitely a bigger variety of ways people collect now because when every game cost $2 20 years ago, it didn't make sense to like be like, well, I'm going to buy the 50 games I want. I'm going to spend $150 and that's it. Because 20 years ago, people didn't have, big collectors didn't have 10,000 games sitting around. So there was always more to collect. But no, I think I still think that people interested in newer consoles who are still collecting, stuff that we don't even think about because I'm just like, PS3, who would want a PS3? I think plenty of those people still want sets.
Okay. I like that you guys have differing opinions, and I think I live somewhere in the middle of both of those opinions. I think a lot of set collecting is dead. I think a lot of the prices have become so absorbent and so ridiculous that it's very hard to justify, or why would you even want to? Why would you want to go spend that money on that kind of stuff? But like you're not wrong when like I still think the dream of a lot of new collectors who stumble into it, like you get this passion, like, oh man, maybe I could get every game ever. Like that's still like the little kid dream. I could maybe have every game ever for this thing because I love it. And I don't think that's ever going to die. I think that's like a thing that people will think, and then the few extreme will do it. But I think the ability to do sets, especially on older stuff, is dead. So I think like Tyler is right that they go for, like, they're just looking for stuff that's more obtainable. And then also, Tyler, I like what you said, that that's the reason we have such a problem talking about sets right now is because people are chopping them up into bigger and bigger subsets all the time, and more different subsets are coming out because people need a way to chunk this up and make it. And now it's not an information overload; it's a price overload. It's a depth of wallet issue, not a depth of knowledge. So, people are trying to construct ways and frameworks in order to, say like, look, I completed this goal, and that's important. It is important in collecting, and I appreciate the people who do it, because if you're just out there willy-nilly just buying everything, it's a long and difficult road, and you will just wind up with a pile of Maddens for every system, and you will be sad one day.
I took something out of my eBay cart today because I'm like, $17? I would rather have $17 towards stadium events. And I didn't buy it. It was awesome.
What did you take out of your cart?
I'm not telling you. I'll tell you after the show. It was really stupid.
Okay.
I'm embarrassed to say that's how bad it was.
Do you have a stadium events fund, Tyler?
I don't have a stadium events fund. I have a price. It's $5,000. If a loose stadium events drops to $5,000, I will buy one. If it continues to go up, a loose NES game, theoretically, if all that matters is condition and importance now, loose stadium events should be going down in price, not up in price. I realize it's one of the most iconic collectible games of all time, but that's my price. I'm not going to try to chase it. I know it's a terrible time to buy it. I saw someone asking $20,000 for one, but I'm not trying to play that game. But if it comes down in price, I do want one.
My point is that you can't. You're using logic of like, oh, I'd rather put this $17 towards stadium events, but you're not doing that. Like, you're not actually going to put that.
But I'm putting. So I know. Stadium events is just kind of like theoretically the number one thing on my want list, but because of all the other conditions, it's not anywhere near the top of my want list. But that'll go towards something that is at the top of my want list. I want the third Left Bros Super Mario 3 variant. I think that would be a cool thing to have. I think
I don't.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I just wanted to be contrary. But about stadium events, have you considered just buying world-class track meet instead? It's the same game.
It's the same.
It is the same. I haven't thought about just shifting my opinions and doing mental gymnastics. That would be so much cheaper.
I haven't thought about just being wrong.
Or maybe they're not wrong if they can play every game. Like, they don't have a regular Super Mario Brothers either. They've got a Super Mario and Duck Hunt. They're like, I can play every game on the NES. I've got every NES game.
Johnny, get the worldwide set. Just get a PAL Stadium events for whatever that costs now.
Well, and
probably get a sealed PAL Stadium events.
We didn't get into that, but like, I think I've asked this before, so does that count, right? So if I'm collecting and I just want one of every game, right? We'll say title. If I go and can I go and get every one of every game and then just buy the PAL Stadium events? Would you call that a complete NES set if I'm mixing all of my regions?
I would be okay with that if you kept it to the one title, just because any more than that, if you were like doing that for like half your titles, that would just be really confusing to explain and it would take you forever. But if you just did it with stadium events, as long as you answered the follow-up question honestly, then I wouldn't have a problem with that. Because I did that for a long time. I had it. In fact, I still have it. Tyler, if you want to buy my my PAL B copy, I have one.
I do not want to.
Really,
that's another thing. Like priorities.
Stefan,
I don't want a placeholder. I want the thing.
I need it. How much is it?
Do you really need it?
We'll talk after.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy one of one of every title for NES, and I can just buy the PAL one, and I'll have a complete set of Nintendo games.
Yeah, it's actually,
not of Super,
it's a
not of
beautiful
Famicom games.
The Famicom game's
Right?
even cheaper though.
Yeah, but I'm not collecting Famicom. I'm collecting Nintendo, NES Nintendo.
So anyway, to
Famicom is a different thing.
to answer my question, to finish my answer, it's as long as you're willing to answer the follow-up question honestly. So like when I had my PAL B Stadium events as my Stadium events placeholder, I would say I had a full set of NES games, and then the immediate follow-up question would almost always be, do you have Stadium events? And then at that point I would qualify the fact that I have a PAL B Stadium events. So
I think the question would be different for me, but if that specific thing, I would say yes. I do you have Stadium events? I would say yes, I do. And if they go, oh, and then I would say, but I have games from every region. My Stadium events is from, is a PAL B cart. Just so you know, I also have Banana Prince and Euphoria, but those and Parasol Stars. Those games didn't come out here, but I have them. They are from different regions.
And then my follow-up question to the person with the PAL B Stadium events would be, are you happy? And everyone but Johnny would say no. And you'd be like, yeah, got Stadium events, don't care.
But it depends on back to the goals. It depends on your goal. If my goal is just to have every NES game, right? Like, and it's not. That isn't like really my goal. It's something I have thought about doing. That's what I'm doing for Super Nintendo. I'm right now deciding I want all of the unique titles that were released in Europe. So not just European exclusive, but if it was a Super Famicom that was also released in Europe but didn't come out here, I want that. I'm trying to decide if I need to get games that had a title change. I'm trying to decide what my rules are for that, because it has a different title. If I was doing the same thing for NES, then I would be happy with it, because I'd just be like, look, I have one of every title. It doesn't matter. Like, there's no dishonesty there. My Contra, I don't know, Contra's a bad example. My Zelda could be a PAL Zelda 2, because if you become region free, like if you remove region as your qualifier, you're just saying, I want one of every title, then that changes everything.
It makes your set into a mess.
So, Tyler, does this bother me? Was a question that I asked myself, and that was the reason why I think Johnny actually knew me when I was putting this set together, so I would imagine he probably remembers this. I bought the PAL B copy, and I let it sit on my shelf, and I looked at it, and I processed how I was feeling about that, and I came to the decision that no, personally, it did not bother me that I have a placeholder copy of Stadium Events, and at that point, I moved on to my next set. It wasn't until I was financially able to get the game as a gift from my wife that I even thought about it again. So for me personally, I thought about it. I made the decision that it did not bother me, and I moved on. Now, that would be a completely different, I'm sure, could be a different scenario for each individual case, but for me, it wasn't.
Right. Like my placeholder copy of Stadium Events, it doesn't bother me. But if I was doing a world set and I was being a European, we'll say a PAL and an NTSC USA set, it wouldn't bother me if my copy of Stadium Events was a PAL copy, because I would be agnostic of region. Region is no longer my qualifier. I'm just trying to buy NES games.
You're trying to buy licensed NES games, because you get into unlicensed and then it's almost impossible to win everything.
Again, there's all the caveats we have to talk about with stupid set collecting.
We didn't even talk about licensed in this whole episode, but it's fine.
We talked a little bit about it. Like, do you count licensed or unlicensed? Does it count? Like, that's the thing about this whole episode. If you think we miss it, you just have to ask yourself, do you think it counts or it doesn't? And then you have to ask one of my favorite episodes of the show. Go listen to that one. But does it count, and does it matter, or do you need to add a caveat? That's it. And who you're talking, and that's why we talked so much about who you're talking to and how the message matters. So, all right. I don't think we should. We're an hour and 47 in to this, which I love, because it's a fun topic for me. But I don't know if we're going to keep anyone engaged much longer.
Sure.
You guys want to move on to the next one, or you Do you have more thoughts that you want to spit at this before we go?
At some point, I wanted to bring up that in my personal lists, I have the Aladdin NES games in the unlicensed list, because in my brain, the Aladdin cartridge plus the Aladdin game combine to form a video game. Because it's not really like the 32X. The Aladdin cartridge is basically half of an NES cartridge. But then, even in the more inconsistent thing, which you won't like, is my TurboGrafx list is every TurboGrafx game, including TurboGrafx CD. Because I've only ever had PC Engine Duo, so I just think of it as one console.
As one console, yeah. But it's not. So for people who don't know, there's TurboGrafx, there's TurboGrafx 16, there's TurboGrafx CD, and there's TurboGrafx Duo, and those all kind of had independent things. I mean, and then if you get like PC Engine and Super Graphics, like once you leave North America, it gets even stickier. But for the North American set, to me, it's 3 distinct systems.
What? Wait, that's 3 distinct systems for you?
The Duo and the CD?
But the Sega CD and 32X are all in Genesis?
Yeah.
So you're the opposite of me. That makes no sense, Johnny.
No, right. Because I'll have to look. I think we had this talk once, and I don't know if I need to revise my thing. I'll have to look at the TurboGrafx boxes and see if it says for play on a TurboGrafx system. Right, because there is a Turbo CD system, right? But the Turbo CD ones, I'm more inclined. But a Turbo Duo is its own unit, which is different than the Turbo CD. A Turbo Duo games, I don't think run on the Turbo CD.
All right, this is not the reaction I expected, because my thought process is totally different. Mine is basically random, just based on what console I happen to own. But all right, we can move on.
And I want to just clarify for that too. So I consider them, for my list sake, and even for, and I didn't want to be intellectually dishonest. For my listing, I don't put my 32X games in the Genesis list. It when I have the platform drop down, it says 32X. It doesn't say Genesis. Right? Because I believe it should still be kept. So I do separate them that way. So I separate them that way. But when I'm thinking about them, I think of Sega CD and that all together. And TurboGrafx, I think of the same way, this kind of homogenized thing. This is my TurboGrafx stuff. And I don't think specifically, this is my TurboGrafx 16 stuff. This is my TurboGrafx CD stuff. This is Duo. I don't do that. But for this, for my lists, I do. I make it more specific, even though it should be sub-platform or something. I'm unsure.
Exactly. Sub-platform. Are we making a new column in collecting?
So I was just because I'm curious and I'm standing right next to my Turbo games. I pulled I'm looking at Ys 3 right now, and they are very meticulous in referring to it as the CD. TurboGrafx CD, or actually they call it the TurboGrafx CD player, which words me out a little bit, but okay.
Yeah. So is the 16 is it the TurboGrafx?
Okay.
And then
it does say TurboGrafx 16 on the front of the game.
Well, and that's if you look at the Turbo stuff, it's super inconsistent. They are awful for consistency throughout packaging, and labeling on the discs and HuGuards. So, anyways, we got more questions on that. Any other caveats? Anything else you want to throw at the people?
I don't.
Okay. Man, I love that we got to have this talk. I hope people are as nerdy about it as I am and enjoyed it. I hope you guys like going down the rabbit hole with me for this long. Anything else, Tyler? You want to? Anything? Nothing? Move on to what?
Dude, can I give
Tyler?
a quick dumb sale update? I said last episode I don't like doing them, but then another one happened that's just so dumb. Sure. I feel like I'm obligated to bring it up on the show. A second print, not that it matters, God of War sold for $3,100 on Heritage Auctions.
Woo!
I don't know, if people... it has to be that the buyer either didn't know what they were buying, or, more likely...
And this was also
just a fake sale. I have no idea.
After... the same print in the same grade sold on eBay for what, $250? Yeah,
$250, and that was in a Wata case. So It's already inflated, basically, if it's an Iwata case. So I don't know.
And all that sold
sealed
previously
games.
for like $65, just the sealed version of it or something.
Yeah, so I don't know anything about sealed games. One thing I do know is that Bucky, who sells a lot of quote unquote overpriced sealed games on eBay, who, if you bought anything from him ever, probably seems like an amazing deal now. He used to sell God of War 1 and 2 as a set for, I think, $100 for both of them. And it was probably the second print of God of War. And now just the God of War 1 sold for $3,100, which will never repeat. It makes absolutely no sense. I'm just throwing it out there as another example of weird, uninformed collectors.
That community is such a like insular bubble, and they only feed off of each other. Like those people aren't like buying games and then going out after the fact to see if if anyone can invalidate their $3,100 purchase. They just want to be secure in the fact that they've made this good purchase.
$3,100 must be nothing to them, like literally nothing. Like my $16.
I'm just saying that it's a ripe. Just the circumstances of the environment are such that it is very likely that something like that could indeed happen again, and probably will.
Well, and that's why I threw out last episode with the $6,000 sale for the Duo. Like, maybe, and like there's the thing, maybe you just have a lot of money or a lot more money than I do, and that's who gives a money to you. Like, maybe $3,000 just doesn't matter. Maybe $3,000 to them is just like, that's my that's like some of my budget.
Buy now.
That's like my lunch budget for a week, I guess. So, but whatever, that's not that big a deal or something. Like, who knows what that amount of money means in their life? Like, if you think about people who are stupid rich, like $6,000 is, not a lot. They've bought bottles of wine more expensive than that, and then drank those bottles of wine and thrown away their trash. So, it just depends on your.
Which, to be clear, their trash is the rest of humanity.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. I just want to say that it's not like they didn't check eBay or anything, because there was one other God of War sale in WATA. It is in lower grade, but it went for $138. So, 30 times what it sold for 6 months ago.
Woo! Goodbye.
Actually, I was thinking about bringing this up. There was another sale, which was surprising to me. It was a loose hot slots. What do you think a loose hot slots went for?
$450.
Right? Like, that's what you would think. It went for $1,000. I feel hot slots has been $1,000 for what, a decade? Like, absolutely does not phase the market when a loose hot slots comes up.
No, I get
so
hot
weird.
Slots, bubble bath babes. Those are all like, they've always been $1,000. They've been $1,000 since when the idea of spending $1,000 on a game made me want to throw up.
Yes.
And now it just makes me like a little uncomfortable.
Oh, oh man, I can't find it now. I really hope I didn't mess up. Someone's gonna get on me for saying that now. Was it a bubble bath babes? I think that'll be a deal for a bubble bath.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares about that unlicensed garbage.
Yeah. See, that's the other thing that shifted is back in the day, because people were so obsessed with Nintendo and only focused on like NES, that things like they were going deep and getting weird like bubble bath babes and the Pan Asian games and fighting over all the unlicensed stuff. Now people are like, that's all trash. No one cares about that. No one has any mind share invested into those games. Bubble Bath Babes is more interesting than a lot of the unlicensed stuff, because it's like a porno game and that's like an interesting subset. But most of that stuff is just trash that no one knows anything about. Like, let's buy Mario and Zelda and Metroid. Why are we dealing with this other garbage for?
Well, you found your audience, Johnny. And I just want to correct myself. It was, in fact, a Peekaboo Poker, which I think is interesting, because I always think of Peekaboo Poker and Bubble Bath Babes as being slightly above Hot Slots. I feel like Hot Slots is the least desirable one. And just the fact that this went for $1,080 means it really probably went for something like $800 plus buyer's premium. Just such a normal price. Very strange to see for such a traditionally collectible game. Like, going back decades, people have wanted the Panesians.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, but see, that's, we talked about it a little bit last time. Like, that's like base level. That's like where they're at right now. But if collecting keeps going, this is a thing I don't think people fully processed. Like, if people keep keep collecting and like, yes, I know that they're all just a bunch of resellers and they're all just flipping. But if some percentage of those all get gobbled up, right, and they just land in actual collectors' hands and then never leave, then they will look for other things to go collect, or they may go deep, and then that stuff will come later. Like this, it's not the first stuff you would buy. You would buy your Marios and your Zeldas first, because that's the stuff you have nostalgia for. That's the stuff you go to first. The weird stuff comes later. The weird stuff comes later. It's not the time for that stuff. So if you're interested in like speculating, that's maybe where I would start to buy the weird stuff now while it's not as expensive.
Yeah, well, and to your point, like that might happen relatively quickly because there is a genuine, lack of supply, and if the demand continues, if more and more of these, just to make the easy argument, more and more of these comic people keep pouring into the market, there's not going to be any more supply, and so like that could happen really, really fast. I mean, I sort of watched it happen with, you guys had said, remember when I said I was scared people were going to start coming after the weird that I collect? Like, and you're like, oh no, I think you got plenty of time. I think that's Tyler's quote. I think you got plenty of time before that happens. Well, I did not have plenty of time before that happens. So
I think you have a lot, Stefan.
Huh?
I think you have a lot. You had enough time to get a bunch of cool shit.
Yeah, but that doesn't justify the argument because I tend to do things quickly.
That's what she said.
But yeah. But all I'm saying is that, because there's so little supply of everything, that shift to the exterior markets is probably going to happen much, much faster than we're prepared for. I mean, it's happening now with PS2. So
I mean that just doesn't make sense. Like that's God of War. Like what? Like is every like big any random big game like Super Mario Galaxy 2, Uncharted, The Last of Us? Like those, there's too many of them to be worth $1,000.
But
no matter how much demand there is.
Well, look, I believe there's too much demand, but I believe that there's so much supply. I do believe that if you like owning the best games for all the systems, if you collect video games, is not a bad idea. Like if you went and bought all the first prints of Uncharted to make sure you had those, you're probably going to get those relatively cheap, and it's probably not a bad buy in the long run. Don't go crazy. Don't spend $3,000 God of War money, but like I don't think it's a mistake to like necessarily get those, because you may get to a point where people go after that.
Yeah, I mean it's a question of when, right? But that and we just don't know what the time
when and if, because we don't know how it's going to shift, right? Like because as the market moves on. And people get older and age out and new people are aging in, their interest may not be there. Like, I don't know in 10 years where the nostalgia is going to be. Are people going to be like, man, I really got to get a Switch set? Like, is that going to be a thing? Or like, I really have to get a Wii set?
But there's also a subset of the market right now that isn't driven particularly by nostalgia. They're driven by the nostalgia of other people who then identify games that they should get, and then they just buy up those games.
Sure, those people. But there's so much of like PS4 and PS3 and PS2 games. Sure. Like that's what I'm saying. It still takes an audience bigger than that to come in. So video game is collecting, even with the new supply of people, is still relatively small, right? So it's not at like we've had this talk before, and we can go down later another time. Like the comparison between coin collecting, and Tyler like brought up that interesting, like how dealers have like pretty much they've made the market so incestuous that a coin that's relatively in high supply, they won't ever like really put it out there for a cheap price, because that would just deflate the market, so it's always going to be artificially high.
Right.
So, I don't know if we're there yet, but like, it could get there. But
yeah, at some point they may all just be. At some point they may just all be paying each other. Like I have noticed recently in the ad space, this is kind of a non sequitur, but it's related. In the ad space for mobile games, it's these hyper casual free to play mobile games that are only advertising other hyper casual free to play mobile games, and then you go over to that game and it's advertising the game that you were previously at. So like the advertisements in games right now is that kind of incestuous secular thing. It's fascinating to watch. They're all just paying each other.
Yep. It's going to be weird too. And like the other thing, and it's like what I preach is we haven't had, the curve is not big enough yet. We don't know, like on a time chart, this is such a small amount of time that we don't know real trends. Like people would come out and say, the game market is dead. And I'm like, literally not enough time has passed. Literally not enough time has passed to make like even a good trend line. So just
literally.
Please, and I mean that as the definition that of 5 years ago, not now, of what literally means. Like, please, there's not enough info. We don't have enough data yet. Yes, you can start to observe things and make note of that, but to make bold claims and like holistic statements is a lot harder.
As reserved investments would say, if you have a bunch of money and you are literally one person, it is not hard to manipulate a market. You're kind of talking about like this God of War, like it'll be a trend, like and it could happen again and things like that. It doesn't matter because it's such an objectively stupid sale that I just wanted to look at it as a curiosity of something that happened compared to Peekaboo Poker, which I feel like maybe it was ignored because it was a loose cartridge. And a lot of these people are just like sealed. They don't care about it if it's not sealed because they're so condition sensitive from comics that like a loose cart is just like, it's incomplete. It's like not even a complete object. Who could possibly care about $1,000 loose cartridge?
So Tyler, and I asked this question not entirely being a troll, but how many objectively stupid sales of an item have to happen before it stops being objectively stupid?
It has to stabilize in price.
If that continued
enough so that it clearly is stabilized. So $9,000 not for resale Halo it's still sold for dumb prices, but like the last one I think went for $4,500, $5,000, something like that. So thousands of dollars swing, still way too far up there. But it hasn't stabilized, so it doesn't exist yet. Like, $36,000 or $33,000, whatever that Zelda 2 sold for, that is not the price of a Zelda 2 now.
Yeah, I want to see that price consistently over a year and like at least a month, like one a month.
Thank you for actually answering my question, Johnny.
No, it has to be more than a year. I think it has to be.
I think at the rate of the market, right now, if a game sells at least once a month for a year, then you can say that the trend of this price is real, not a dumb one-off, right? This isn't just dumb. You can still say this is dumb and people are still overpaying, but like at least then it's an actual trend and not a goof.
All right. I think it also matters, in relation to everything else on the market. First of all, it's the wrong thing for God of War because if you had $3,000 to spend on God of War, you could easily buy multiple first print copies. The more important thing.
That was our problem with the $6,000 sales, right? Like if you said one was like a really dedicated, GameCube collector, that makes sense. But if you were just buying it like as a speculation because you thought it was a hot property, there are so many better things to buy for $6,000. You could buy 10 better things that will be holistically a better investment for you in the long run than that thing. And that, like the same thing about God of War. Like if that was just like, maybe there's something weird about that. But if you like $3,000 in video games is still a lot of money, and you can buy much cooler, much more desirable, easy to flip things than that.
Guys, I'm looking forward to Uncharted 3 selling for $1,000.
I hope so.
To be clear, Uncharted 3 is probably the most common Uncharted game sealed. I don't know why. I mean, maybe Uncharted 4, maybe it's like still in production. You can get Uncharted 3 for less than $10. And also Uncharted 3 is nobody's favorite Uncharted game. But I'm looking forward to the day because it says Uncharted on it.
Man, Uncharted 2 is so good though.
Oh, Uncharted 2 is so good.
It's so good.
I used to play it I used to come home from college, come home from class, I would sit down, I would play through the entire game. It would take me like 8 hours. I love that game.
It's a good game. It's a real good, and I love the length because it's just the perfect little bite of video game. You're like, got everything I needed out of a game in this time frame. All right.
Andrew Hyrule Vice does not like the Uncharted games.
Andrew is a person I like, but is wrong. So here, let's just.
I don't like that it was so successful that it like spun up essentially a genre of climbing games.
I don't
like
know.
I would like Uncharted more if it like the later, like I really enjoyed the first two Uncharted's, but then like there was like then Assassin's Creed spun up and everything was Assassin's Creed, and like it just, I don't know, I wish it was a unique genre.
I
and
know.
I would enjoy it more if it was.
I don't think like that's any worse than just having like platformers like that kind of adventure game for modern consoles isn't a problem with me. Like the new Tomb Raiders I enjoy a lot, just like the Uncharted's. They are similar enough. I've liked every Uncharted game, even the spin-off. I liked all the Tomb Raiders. I enjoyed playing them. Yeah, I like all of them.
Fortune is $150 sealed.
That's been going up in price. That's been going crazy. I mean, probably because of all the nonsense in the market, but.
Right.
I literally bought mine for $6 last year because I was talking about how I'm buying my favorite game sealed just to get it out of the way in case. So yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like that's
Wait,
like
and I'm the prophet, dude. That was a good move.
well, because they were all $6. What was I gonna do? Lose money?
Yeah, yeah. You were gonna lose money.
Watch out buying sealed Uncharted, guys. There was a controller bundle. It has a little bar at the top, I think, that says not for resale. There's like some little skinny bar at the top. You don't want that bullshit copy. You want a real Black Label copy.
Since I don't care about sealed games, I'm like, cool, because I have my original Uncharted 2 that I bought on launch day, and I'm like, this is the one I played, so I'll always feel good about it. All right, let's move into the second half of the show. Like we love to talk, apparently, guys. We missed it last time. We didn't talk about what we were playing. We talked about what we bought a lot, though. So what are we buying and playing right now, Tyler?
Oh, don't start with me. Start with Stefan. I want to get obliterated.
No, I'm sure I don't have anything like spectacular. I'm just looking.
Didn't he say that last week? And then he's like, "I got an Earthbound Preview,
No.
and I've got like that's literally how it started."
What did I buy? Hold on.
So much stuff you can't remember.
See, Johnny, you should go first.
No, I'm not going first. Tyler, I like to go last and just.
All right, I bought
make everyone
a
feel
loose copy of Syndicate, which was the second biggest SNES game I needed for my set.
Woo
Now we only have
woo!
Pagane left. Also, were we talking about this on the show? I think this was before the show. So I thought the guy sent me a different game because it was in slightly worse condition than what I bought. And it's because he tried to clean it. So the game I bought was stickered up and had Sharpie on the cartridge, and he cleaned it up, but he didn't do like a great job of it. So that's don't clean your games. Send me the item in the picture. Anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was trying to do you a solid.
I bought an N64 complete copy of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater because it has
why?
It's been on my want list and it's been like super low priority, and then they announced the remakes, and like literally 7 minutes after they announced that, I'm like, I went to eBay and I bought the cheapest one because with N64 prices these days, that's a very playable game. I feel like it could easily be like $50 overnight, and that it was like a $30 game. So
I agree.
yep. And then I think the only other exciting thing that I actually have in my hand, and by exciting I mean no one even knows what it is Relics and Kuru Yosai for the Famicom Disk System. It is one of the Famicom Disk System games that comes in a big box, which is always interesting. So it has a big cardboard box, and then inside it is the regular sized Famicom disk thing, and then it has a separate monster manual. And it is sort of like Metroid, except every aspect of it is completely horrible. It is a garbage, unplayable game. Even if you pretended you like the awful, slow plotting gameplay, it has load times in between every screen. Like imagine if Metroid had load times in between every screen. It's a really bad game. But it comes in a big box and it's cheap. So
Metroid does have load times, but they're cleverly disguised.
Sure. Unlike Animal Crossing New Horizons load times, which are f***ing unacceptable.
I don't know anything about it. I've never played a minute of it.
Well, get 400 hours in, and 50 of those hours are going to be load times.
Woo, that sounds really great.
Load times or lengthy dialogues that you've already seen before. Like every time you want to visit someone else's island, it's like, oh, you want to visit someone else's island? Whose island do you want to visit? Do you want to visit them locally or over online? Oh, online? Did I get that right? Okay, let me connect you to online. Do. Oh,
I'm
You don't like
bored.
tedium,
I'm already
not
bored.
play
Just
Animal
stop.
Johnny, I have come to the conclusion that Tyler only plays games for any length of time that cause him pain.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Nice summation.
Like that's one. I mean, how often does he talk about like he's like, "Oh, I'm playing RuneScape. It's ruining my life."
well,
The
RuneScape
only-
that's
is a
all-
life ruining game. I don't think
Every,
only-
but every
well-
every game you play, it always ends with "It's ruining my life."
The only game you don't ever say that about is like, I played Ninja Gaiden 2 and it was beautiful.
Yeah. And now I'm gonna go play something with Ada that's ruining my life.
Yeah. Everything else is ruining your life.
it's true.
So
And hey, also, guys, I played RuneScape. It's ruining my
Play
life.
games that don't ruin your life.
I just got my fishing level up to 50, so I can catch swordfish now.
oh my god, stop playing RuneScape. The skill leveling in that is so bullshit and stupid. You're never getting those days back.
Yeah.
right.
I think I got 9 days on my account now.
Oh.
Gone. Poof from my life.
This is also the part of the show where we get Piper giggling. It seems to be like clockwork.
She knows what time it is.
It's midnight. Put that young lady to bed.
Okay.
Come on.
He doesn't want to have this conversation on Facebook again.
It's Rona country, man. She goes to
But
bed
do
whenever
people
she
actually get on your case about that?
wants. Oh, constantly.
Oh, okay.
Here's your thing. The minute you put a picture of your child doing something that another parent wouldn't do on Facebook, then they feel like they're entitled to come and tell you how to do stuff with your children.
Yeah, let me tell you how many times a day people want to just like check in to make sure Piper still likes her haircut. F you.
Oh my god. Hey, are you sure you didn't up being a dad?
That's exactly the tone.
Hey, Stefan, just real quick though, does Piper like her haircut? Cause
She
just kidding.
She loves her haircut.
It's cool. Piper and I have the same haircut.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We actually all of us have the same haircut right now. We all did the Corona cut together and shaved our heads. So that's cool. Stefan, what are you playing and what are you buying? I always feel like the Resident Evil 4 guy when I say, "What you buying? What you selling?" Like that guy.
I've been playing a lot of World of Warcraft. It's towards the end of the expansion, so anytime that's the case, then they like give you all sorts of like, oh, it's easier to get rep or it's cheaper to get this or whatever. So I'm getting my character ready for the next expansion. So I've been playing a lot of WoW.
Why a giant bee in that, and I don't like it.
I do. I have a giant bee mount, and it makes me so happy. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've been playing, I think. Oh no, obviously I'm continuing to stream the Earthbound prototype. I've been doing that a lot actually, and so yeah, I've been playing Earthbound, and I've been playing World of Warcraft. That's my plan.
What'd you buy?
Buying actually, for the first time in a long time, I can say I've actually only bought games. I was just looking at my
What DS games did you buy?
No. I lied. I bought games and a Laserdisc player.
Whoa! Yeah. Oh, probably a really good one too.
I did buy a very good Laserdisc.
Why? There's no such thing as a really good Laserdisc player. Like there's no such
Johnny,
thing as a really good VCR.
You haven't gone through the phase of buying like ex-school Laserdisc players that have like districts blah, 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 written on the top of them in Sharpie.
They're all bad. They're all varying
Johnny, I
degrees
could
of
be
bad.
spending $3,000 in God of War. This is like a hey, you could be buying drugs with that money kind of conversation. I feel like
Maybe just go buy drugs.
that'd be better.
Maybe at this point, I don't like
A heroin habit would be more reasonable than buying a Laserdisc player.
Yeah, so resale value on drugs is amazing, though, right?
That's fair. But yeah, I've been buying a lot of sealed stuff, honestly. But like,
Gross.
not anything that you would assume that I'd be buying. It's all stuff that like things that I worked on. I bought a sealed copy of Fairly Odd Parents for the Xbox. Anybody clamoring for that?
That's gonna be
Yep.
like a $200 game next year. Come on, Stefan.
No, it is
Yeah,
not.
now that I've said it.
Nope, it's
Yeah.
going to
It's
be a $3
licensed
game
property.
A sealed copy of Monopoly for Super Nintendo, like stuff like that. Battle Clash, all these things that no one's clamoring for. I don't think I've spent
this
over.
segment. You're embarrassing yourself.
No, I'm just not collecting for the same motivations that other
I
people are.
thought you were going to tell me about some cool DS games you bought.
I'm doing that same thing, Tyler. I'm doing.
I know. You're doing
you were
exactly what I'm doing.
games for $6.
I'm totally doing it as a joke because I bought shit like Uncharted and whatever.
And now I might
Did-
buy Uncharted. God damn it.
Yeah, dude, Uncharted. Oh, the first Uncharted game, not the best Uncharted game, but all that
you should
matters is
download-
first
But-
anymore. It doesn't
But none of the
matter.
speculators know that because they have never played any of them.
My Uncharted 2 is the special edition one, the annoying one. Worst special edition ever.
So, okay, off topic. I've been like deciding what versions of modern games to buy, and I almost always want the standard edition.
Yep.
Like I was, I needed a copy of Halo 3, and I looked at the limited edition, like because the prices are basically the same because they're all worthless. And it's like, no, I just want the regular Halo 3. That's the box art I know and love, not this shitty tin case that says 3 on it.
Well, and a lot of times too now they're just putting retail copies of the games in these big boxes, or no copy of the game in the big box.
Well, but like
But,
but the Halo one, all 3 versions of Halo 3, the main 3 that were released anyways, all had like different box arts. So there was like the tin one, and then there was the one that came in the helmet, and then there was like the standard one. There was all different box art. It was really gross.
Yeah, I'm a standard guy.
I have the helmet. It's terrible because it's got like the statue in it and like that little like cabinet or whatever, but the cabinet doesn't stay closed. The door always fucking opens. Real annoying. I like the coin and stuff in it. Everything else is garbage.
Oh, I also bought a few more long box PS1 games. I'm almost there, guys. I'm like,
I hear that's a terrible set to be going for right now. So, geez.
well, I have anything of merit I have out of the way. It's just like, it's the common stuff just waiting for it to come up.
A real question. Did you buy any cereal boxes?
Not this week.
Okay.
Okay, Johnny, I'm sorry I need to derail us again. So I've been pretending to know what you're talking about with Uncharted 2 Special Edition, and I have no f***ing idea what you're talking about. I know about the Fortune Hunter Edition.
Maybe I'm thinking of the Uncharted 3 Special Edition. I can't remember. Maybe I've conflated them.
The closer you
There's-
get to modern times, the more I'll believe there's just some stupid special edition that I don't care about. Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, maybe I have it backwards. Because one of them I bought the special edition for, and it was like a real. Oh yeah, it's 3 that has the dumb box. Yeah. So it's Drake's Deception. It comes with like a little statue, which is fine, but it comes in like this cabinet, like a wardrobe. You're like, all right, does this take me to Narnia? No, it takes me to Annoyance. That's the only place it goes. It's awful. Yeah, no,
Tyler, we should just
good.
start like slowly slipping in fake variants of modern games. And just like
just
in this
lacing
segment,
it.
just talk about like games that just do not exist that we bought.
Just that this whole Uncharted 3 segment was made up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
You
no
guys don't
box.
have Uncharted 2 Black? Yeah, there's a black steelbook. It's completely black. It's in gold. It says Drake's Fortune on it. You don't
There
have
would
this
be
one?
a certain subset of our audience that would go insane.
Yeah, the only place you could get it was on the Naughty Dog website. So you had to
Actually,
go.
a
and it was
pre-release thing. You have to use your forum points to buy it,
the-
and the website's offline, and it's not on Internet Archive. How crazy is that?
And that is not the same release as the Del Taco release, just to be clear.
Yep.
They're very similar.
Rough out there.
One says Del Taco.
Have you seen the Del Taco version of the PS2? It's crazy.
Okay, guys, just to implant the idea, because I know we do have a bunch of listeners, someone start making hoax video games, like a Del Taco PS2 or something, but with like really legit looking box with like a real picture that you're taking of it, and start getting people to think there's a Del Taco PS2.
I want this so bad. I want this to happen so bad. I want the speculators to be frothing for games that don't exist.
No one's speculating on this stuff. Get out of here. Let's treat our audience nicely. Guys, here's what I'm playing right now. I'm playing a little bit of Final Fantasy V. Tyler does not approve on how I'm playing it because I'm using a Retron 5 because it is the easiest way for me to play it on my television.
That's fine. I would probably play it on an emulator too. I don't think I have an SNES flash card.
I mean, it is. I am using my cartridge. My cartridge is in there, an actual Final Fantasy.
Never mind. I don't approve of this. Never mind, dear.
And I am using the save because I sometimes I go to bed and I have my little SP that I bring with me and then just slam it in there. So I'm using both. But for when I want to play on the big TV, I'm using the Retron because it just looks better than the Game Boy player. I tested them both out, and the Game Boy player just it doesn't look as nice. And,
Do you have the black one or the gray one?
The black one.
Good.
Um,
They don't death grip the carts as badly.
Yep.
The
And
gray ones, dude.
I want the spice orange one. That's the one I want to go with my Spice Orange GameCube controller.
Wait,
So
you're
I
talking about the
thought
GameCube Game Boy player? There's a gray one? Or you mean like a silver one for the Match the Silver Platinum?
Oh no, I was talking about the Retron.
Oh, whatever.
Oh.
Jesus
Yeah, no.
There's like an SNES colored gray and purple one or gray and blue one,
Yep.
and then there's a black one, and the black one is the second release. The first release, if you are going to buy a Retron, please buy the black ones.
If you're going to buy a Retron, just wait for Polymega, which is apparently just a Retron, but at least made by emulator people who kind of care.
Yeah, but that's like you can't. That's not. It can't be a blanket recommendation because the price points are drastically different.
I want to have a whole conversation about like the Polymega later because it's about to come out. Well, that's going to be like a whole segment of an episode at least. Like I want to talk about what we think it's going to do to some of the game systems that it plays for, if we think it'll move anything. We'll have that talk maybe in an episode or two. But anyways, I'm playing that. That's the only thing I'm playing, and I'm only playing that once in a while. I don't even have that many hours into it. Just slowly chipping away at it. I was going to play Final Fantasy 6, but then I was like, man, everyone goes and plays 6. I haven't played 5 in a long time, so let me go do that instead. So that's what I did instead of replaying Final Fantasy 7. Let's see, what else? I'm not playing anything else. I am buying stuff. I'm buying just still GBA stuff, guys. It's not like it's exciting if you like GBA, but you know, I don't know how pumped anybody is for like let's see, like Iridian 2 I bought. I know I got a neat from Tyler on that one.
I like Iridian 2. It's cool. It might have been because I bought it at a time where all GBA games were worthless, but Iridian 2 was still like a $20 cartridge, so I feel like the market has told me that it's a cool game, and now that's always stuck in my head.
Okay. Like I got Serious Sam, which is like kind of hard to pick up. I got like, you know, I got stuff like this. I got like Men in Black 2. The thing that I was excited to buy, and this is like a weird thing. The Men in Black 2 is Game Boy Color, by the way, just because there's a Men in Black on the GBA. I want to just be specific. I bought a Wii game, guys. It happened. Anybody shocked? No one? No one shocked.
Kinda.
Was it Wii Sports?
No, I already
Popular
own
game
Wii
to
Sports.
buy right now.
Yeah, no. I bought Coraline for the Wii to go in my Halloween games. I also bought it for the PlayStation 2.
Oh, okay.
As someone who you have over 1,000 Wii games,
I don't have Coraline, and you would think
I'm shocked that you don't have Coraline.
right? Well, you'd think that Coraline would be dog shit common, and you were 100% wrong. It's actually like a rare game for the system and kind of expensive.
I would have figured you'd target it anyway, though.
I thought so too. And when I was like, I went to go get it because, so here's some of my bad parenting. My son gravitates to certain movies. Shrek is one of them. And like, he'll sit down and like sit through that, even though he's like 18 months. But one that even surpassed Shrek, and that is like kind of scary, but he loves Coraline, loves this movie. Like Coraline is great. I love Neil Gaiman and everything. I enjoyed this movie. I saw it in the theater. I have nothing wrong with it except that my son, this is like one of the few movies he'll just like sit down and sit through. So I was like, man, I got to go check and make sure I have like these Coraline games because anything he's interested, I like to have. So I was like, well, you know, he may want to see that, or maybe I can play those games and he'll be interested. And at least then I'm not watching the same thing. At least I'll be playing the same thing. So I was like, oh, I'll go grab my Coraline and I'll set up the Wii if I have to, or the PS2. And I'm like, I don't have Coraline on the PS2. Okay, that makes sense. And then I'm like, wait, I don't have it on the Wii? What do you mean I don't have it on the Wii? And then there's a DS version. I'm like, well,
there's a Wii game I don't have? This is very disturbing. Well,
especially in Coraline too, because it is 100% in my wheelhouse. It is also one of my wife's favorite movies. You know, it's a staple in the house. My wife, you know, her favorite books are by J.K. Rowling and Neil Gaiman. Those are her two authors. Those are like, so her library is, you know, a bunch of international Harry Potter books and then a bunch of Neil Gaiman books. So anything to do with Neil Gaiman, she's in for. So you would think I would have these already. Nope. It was very shocking to me. So yeah, I was like, well, instant correction mode. Let's go buy this. And then I was like, oh, surely I have the DS game because I've got like 700 DS games. And again, this would be, you would think, something I would target. Nope, don't have it on the DS, and it's stupid hard to find on the DS. Harder to find on the
Coraline,
DS.
a popular movie? I haven't seen it. I just remember it. I just know it's like scary, and people were like, "Oh, this movie's scary."
I don't know if it is like a popular game. It was like a fairly popular movie. It's
made 125 million. I would call that pretty popular.
Well, and it was, well received and like well reviewed, and the story is interesting and stuff. So, it's an interesting movie. It's claymation. So if you hate claymation, you're not going to like it. It's by the same guy who directed Nightmare Before Christmas, Henry Selick or something like that. Anyways, so I bought that. Those were my big purchases. That's what
Did you just blow my mind in informing me for the very first time in my life that Tim Burton did not direct Nightmare Before Christmas?
That is correct.
Huh. Mind blown. Learn something new every day.
Yep.
Yeah, I would have guessed that too. So.
Yep, like it's a Tim Burton movie, like clearly, but he was not the director.
Huh. I did not know that.
Yeah, I'm like 99% sure on that. Now I like.
No, you're right.
Did you just Google it?
I'm on the Wikipedia, doing the hot lookups of the things our listeners want to know. Who directed The Nightmare Before Christmas? Johnny, give someone like some variant tip or something just to make up for this conversation.
Nightmare Before Christmas. The best version to get is the GBA one with the lenticular cover. It's a different game. It's not just the standard PlayStation game or Xbox One. It's actually its own thing. It's Nightmare Before Christmas, The Pumpkin King. So it has a separate title. It's awesome. Go grab it.
In fact, I worked on that.
So
cool.
Yeah, the cover's
I like
awesome.
lenticular cover. I'll take anything with a lenticular cover. I'll take as a fun fact.
Yep.
Go get Pac-Man 2 on Sega Genesis.
Yeah. More.
You want me to sign that game? Just send it to me.
I sure don't. But what I would recommend, if you like Coraline, if you're interested in the PAL copy, you can get a PAL one. They're expensive there too, but it's got the more colorful cover on it. I'm torn on which cover I like best, but yeah, I think Coraline 2. I think the cover that for PlayStation, I think it looks better in a PlayStation 2 case than a Wii case, but I like it on Wii. The PAL version on Wii cover better than the American release, or the US release, I should say. Not US, North American. God damn it. Whew, there we go.
I'm going to cut you off here, Johnny, because it's very late. Stefan, do you have anything else you played or bought?
Nope. Well, I just bought Uncharted.
Jesus Christ.
You don't need to cut me off. I was done.
Okay, I wanted to make sure you're done. Wait, was Stefan going? I don't even remember where we are in this. We got such a tangent.
I wanted to be at the end so we could just do the thing and end it.
Okay. Stefan, you really just bought a sealed Uncharted? Just buy it now, just whatever was available.
$36.
It sounds like you bought the wrong version.
No, I bought an employee copy with a slash through the barcode.
That's the wrong copy.
Because I don't give
Okay.
Because he likes employee-owned things, so this makes sense to him. This fits.
Yep.
It's on brand.
It's on brand.
It's part of his personal set. Bring it all together, everyone.
Stefan, tell me you're set. Oh, God. Well, if you don't have all the Nintendo Power employee copies, you don't even have a set. What are you talking about?
I know. Like, what are you even doing with your life?
Yeah. All right.
If you don't have the phone number to at least like 25 gameplay counselors in your phone, what are you doing?
Moving on is what we're doing. Hey, Tyler, tell them about the thing you just did and where they can view it and where they can find you online.
Well, you can find me at Default Gen on Instagram, Video Game Sage. I have been posting a little bit more. I'm very excited to be back in the world. And YouTube. And there's a new Retro Gem Miner video. And just to be clear to everybody, the Retro Gem Miner is in fact a real thing. But also, it's basically a stupid parody thing I make for just friends I discuss games with. So
I think parody is wrong, right? It's satire?
Satire, all right. I can't use words. I'm a poor communicator.
Okay, he did not used to be a parody of. It's
parody, but it's also
investments.
Yeah.
So the problem is that the character is not at all consistent in what it is. It's just like sometimes I'm too lazy to be a character.
It's almost two characters. The one you're doing now is kind of like Retro Gem Investments. I like to think that Chase down his timeline was like this broy N64 collector who was just after these gems. Then he saw reserved investments and was like, oh, I've got to up my game and get serious. Put on the button-up shirt and like the glasses and was like, I'm a serious investor now, so I have to do investor things. These aren't just gems; these are investment. So he went into that mode. So it's consistent. Yeah. He's following an arc. I'm invested in what Chase Peridot is doing.
Oh my god! Yeah, it's all planned out. I've got the full season finale written out. Yes, these are definitely not just stupid videos that I fart out in an evening.
And they are amazing. So this last video I watched like on repeat for several hours. I was so enthralled with it.
It was a very good video. I watched it twice, but not. I didn't
watch on repeat for several hours.
I didn't watch it a weird amount.
I love that Stefan is just like this unabashedly huge retro gem miner fan.
I like him. I just gave you his arc. I get no credit for telling you
that's true.
Chase Peridot's arc. Like, I know what's going on. I could write for the show is all I'm saying. You got a spot.
Also, I mean, just knowing that his name is Chase Peridot, that's like base level, like solid fan.
Right there. Yeah, you're right. I would assume most people would probably forget that excellent fact.
All right. There we go. Boom. Anyways, the new video was excellent. I enjoyed it very much. Good job, Tyler. Stefan, what are you doing and where can we find you?
I have been, as far as what I've been doing, mostly I have been streaming the Earthbound prototype on the YouTubes at Archon 1981. ARCHON 1981.
Prototype.
Oh boy.
You asked what I've been doing, and that's what I've been doing.
I've been showing the people. You know, the little ones.
Tyler made a video. I've been streaming. So yeah, so that's continuing.
You can find me on Art of NP on Twitter. That's Art of NP. You can also say Nintendo Power. I will show up in the search.
Yeah, and in fact, if you just search for Nintendo Power right now, I am the #1 search return.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Humble brag.
SEO.
All right.
But yeah, so on Instagram and Video Game Stage and YouTube as Archon 1981, and on Twitter as Art of NP.
All right, excellent. You know where you can find me. You can find me right here on this podcast. I haven't been on Instagram very much. I've been kind of overwhelmed with all the social media intake right now. It's,
Isn't it funny that the more time that we have for social media, the less time we want to spend on it?
Right. Like, it's a place I like to go and visit that isn't reality, but now that's like, it's flip-flop.
Your reality?
It's reality, and now I don't want to, especially like, my Instagram timeline is getting real political, so if you guys could knock that off or opinionated about like medical non-facts, guys, if you're not a doctor, you're not a medical professional, and even if you aren't a specific infectious disease, like I don't care about your opinion. I'm sorry, I just don't. It's also not why I'm here. I just want to see your games. Show me your games, please. Like, show me all your weird variants. Talk nerdy to me. Don't tell me about how much you like or hate President Trump. I don't want to hear either way. I'm not talking about what my leanings are. I want nothing to do with any of that here. I don't want to know if you want to fire Fauci. I don't know if you want to make him the next Christ. I don't care. Please go back to a thing where I can just see video games. I muted a lot of you guys. I didn't unfollow, but I muted, and we'll revisit this later and see if we've all learned to behave in a month, because I'm tired of it. I don't want that. It's not why I take a break on social media. This shouldn't be your news outlet. Also, like, go to real news. And now I just want to talk to people about how to find real news, and I don't even want to go on that because this isn't what you're here for. All right. That's all. You can also find me sometimes on Video Game Sage. I post there once in a while, and I look at stuff. And like Stefan knows, I never comment usually on Facebook. I posted something on Facebook recently, but mostly I don't, or on Twitter. But I go and I read all of those things. I probably astonished Stefan that I knew the conversation that happened on his Twitter timeline with him. the other day.
I was pleasantly surprised. I
I
had a oh, he does care moment.
I tell you, I read it all, but I don't like to comment because it's just not a place to engage people right now. That's the problem. People aren't in a mood to listen or be reasonable. So I'm kind of avoiding that part. Anyways, you can find me in those places if you really need to me. If you want to reach out and you feel like you can't find me, send me a personal message. I do usually respond to all of those if I didn't see something you posted on a picture I wrote or I threw up. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. I know it was a super long episode. Hope you guys have some interesting thoughts on sets. Tell me what you think we got wrong, and let me know what you got that you feel like maybe we missed. Or if you thought we were bat crazy doing an episode like this and it was stupid, you can also let me know that. Anyways, that's it for the show. Bye.